Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Thank you all for your timely attendance. And so we always start the meeting out by having our leadership roll call. So I've just asked that we go around the table. Leadership team members can introduce themselves and briefly describe what their role is on the leadership team, and then we'll move into the other recognition. So, John.
Yeah, today, planning District 1 Commissioner, actually that ends Thursday. And
Michael Laenthal, I'm a Deputy Chief with El Dorado Hills Fire Department. I chair the Public Safety Committee for the Community Council. And essentially, I just network any public concerns, whether it's law or fire, to the appropriate agency and try to follow through to make sure the problems are addressed.
I'm Kathy Burrow, and I'm the Director for First Five El Dorado, and I'm here to represent our Healthy Community section of this.
I'm Cindy Munt. I'm Supervisor Heidal's assistant, and I do the community information and outreach for the council.
I'm John Howell, District 1 Supervisor.
I'm John Davey. I'm the chair of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. It's a volunteer group of residents that looks at proposed developments in El Dorado Hills and provides feedback to the process.
I'm Lawrence Mimoto. I'm the co-chair of the El Dorado County Youth Commission, and I'm also the student body president at Oak Ridge High School. So I'm here to represent the voice of the youth and just talk about youth issues and opinions.
Terrific. Bob Williams, I only attempt to represent the concerns of the good citizens of El Dorado Hills, south of White Rock, basically District 2. So, thank you.
Robert. And Richard Ross, who is our member representing good governance, is absent this evening. He's also part of our charter review committee. So he's off doing that work for us this evening, and we'll welcome him back when he gets an opportunity. So with that, I'd also like to recognize any one of the District 1, either commissioners or committee members who are present. So let's start with Raylene and just describe what your role is. Give us your full name, please. Very good. And then Tita?
Raylene and I are both on the California Senior Legislature.
Yes.
Senior Senator, and I'm Senior Assembly Member.
I'm going to ask our Assemblyman, are you familiar with that, the senior membership in the senior legislature? Because ultimately, we're going to come and ask you for some help there. Good man. I like that answer.
We need your number.
Thank you, Assemblyman. We'll pass it around so everybody has it, yeah. And with anybody online, let's see.
Wendy May.
Wendy May, yes. Would you please identify your role? Steve Clear. Wendy, did you hear us?
Yes, I had not been unmuted yet. Thank you.
There you
so
go.
much, Supervisor Heidal. Thank you, and fellow commissioners. Wendy May here, your Tax Assessor Appeals Board Director. And thank you so much for the possibility of Zoom so I can not only be there in spirit.
Excellent. Thank you, Wendy May.
Thank
And
you.
Stephen Clavier. Dr. Clavier, would you introduce yourself, please?
I just unmuted. Hi,
There you go. Hi.
I'm Steve Clavier. I'm a member of the Behavioral Health Commission.
Excellent. Thank you. And we also have some members of the Planning Commissioner on here and other members, but I don't see any of the District 1 commissioners or committee members beyond that. So again, thank you all for your attendance. And we will move on to item 2, adoption of the agenda. Is there anyone on the leadership team who would like to propose any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll accept it as submitted. Our third item this evening is public comment. This is the portion of the meeting we would invite anyone who would like to come forward and speak to the leadership team about an item that's not on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so. Oftentimes, this is in the form of a commentary or a question. So at this time, we'd open it up and we'd ask you to please either use one of the portable mics so people on Zoom can hear you, or come to the podium and use the microphone at the podium. We think that's working, right, Chief? Okay, okay. Okay. Lenny? Yeah. Either way, yeah.
Hi, my name is Lenny Patani. I live in Crescent Hills and El Dorado Hills. And right from the get-go, I want to tell you, I'm not mad. I speak more out of frustration. It's been a really frustrating couple of weeks. Anyway, I called John. You should have never given me your cell phone number.
Give it to a lot of people, that's okay.
I had to call him last week, and I think he knew I was very upset about things that were going on. Anyway, first thing I'd like to talk about is graffiti. We've had a huge increase in graffiti, especially in the central El Dorado Hills area. La Borgata got hit twice in 2 weeks, quite a bit of graffiti. They were really good when Teresa's my wife, when we called their management, they took care of it right away. This time, not so happy. It's been there for about 2 weeks now. There's graffiti on numerous areas. Numerous the green boxes, utility boxes got tagged all over town. Got so frustrated in that, Teresa and I went down to Ace Hardware and got the camouflage green color and did it ourselves. We painted 6 or 7 boxes because whoever it is, whether it's the phone company or electrical or whatever, they're like, yeah, there's graffiti all over all our boxes. Well, that's unacceptable. We took care of it. No one was going to do that at all. There were signs on El Dorado Hills Boulevard in Saratoga that got tagged, and they're still tagging underneath the freeway on, I guess it would be El Dorado Hills Boulevard underneath the freeway. So as it
I think
stands
it's
now,
a Caltrans responsibility, if I understand.
once
that correctly.
again, we've got no response from them. We
Okay.
can't even get a call back. But anyway, La Borgata, the management's been good. They said they're going to get on it sometime this week. It was tagged pretty hard. Raley's, the management of that mall, took care of it like within 2 days. Looks great. We took care of the utility boxes. The signs were taken care of by county roads, and Latrobe has not been taken care of underneath the freeway. So I've tried numerous times to call the state and Caltrans. They're just not interested. So anyway, that was a point of frustration because I feel once graffiti starts, if you don't get rid of it, they're going to continue to do it, and it's an eyesore in our town, and I really believe our town should be a clean and neat place. On that subject, is there anyone here from County Roads?
No, DOT's not represented here. this
Okay,
evening.
because I just want to tell them right now, let's disagree but still be friends.
Okay,
Called County Roads last year about El Dorado Hills Boulevard between Serrano and Wilson.
Yep.
Nothing was done. I called you, John. The next day, they're out there trimming the bushes. Once again, this year, same thing. People are physically having to walk off of the walking path onto El Dorado Hills Boulevard. A lady with a baby the other day, and I called and they go, that's life. That is ours. They admitted it was theirs, and they said, we're not going to get around to it this year. And I go, yes, you are. Okay, that's a safety issue. So far, they've spent, I wish there was someone here from County Roads, because
oftentimes they attend, but we
so,
didn't see anything. on the
anyway,
agenda.
they had 2 guys there for 2 days in a row, literally arrived at 10 o'clock in the morning, left at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They worked for 3 hours. They did a third one day, literally probably a 4-hour job. They did a third the next day, and there's still a section that people have to walk onto El Dorado Hills Boulevard, cannot go on the walking trail. I was surprised they didn't finish it today, but nothing's been done.
Okay.
Also, I let them know, Latrobe, where you go into town center, the center median is full of weeds. It's an hour job, weed whack and spray, they're done. And I also let them know, and they admitted that all these were theirs. They did admit that. And they said, basically, we're probably not going to get around to doing it. We're busy in South Lake Tahoe, blah, blah, blah. Unacceptable. We pay taxes down here too. And the third area was Green Valley Road, just west of Francisco. You have a cement center median full of weeds. Now the litter has gone on. It's attached to the weeds. It looks terrible. Once again, probably an hour job of weed whacking that and then spraying, it would be done. Someone did call me back and all they said was, yeah, those 3 areas are ours. We don't know when we're going to get around to doing it.
Okay, all right. I'll follow up with that as well, but I appreciate your efforts to personally get involved and to bring our attention to it. And
The last thing I'd like to bring up, I am the guy, I've never admitted it before, but I'm the guy in the white Toyota pickup truck that cleans up litter on El Dorado Hills Boulevard. I do it once a month for a couple hours. It's a long story, but I have a friend who passed away, and I kind of promised him I would do that for him. He used to pick up litter, and I'm overwhelmed now. I can't keep up anymore. The other night, I was telling you, I picked up 5 tires. My truck was full to the brim in 2 hours, and I did a small section. So I'm going to go to the CSD meeting. They adopted US 50. I don't see why they can't adopt a section of El Dorado Hills Boulevard too. In fact, I think they should have adopted something within the city before they adopted a freeway. But it's overwhelming now. I don't know if it's our population's grown or what, but in the past, I've been doing it for 10 years now. I'm a retired fireman. That's what I decided to do instead of get involved in politics. And it's overwhelming now. So if the county or the CSD wants to get to do a litter like they do on 50, I'd be happy to get it rolling and everything, but it's overwhelming now. You drive El Dorado Hills Boulevard, it's a mess. So
One time we had a spring cleanup program that we got started.
We used to
worked pretty
have when
well,
we-
and then things kind of disappeared, so
we,
may have to
when
revisit
I
that.
first moved here 22, 23 years ago, it was fantastic. We had a cleanup and there'd be 50 people there and they would leave the bags on the side of the road and the fire department actually came, their volunteers with a flatbed and picked them all up and took the bags when they were full away. And I go, this is great, but it probably hasn't been done for 15 years now. But anyway, I really think this is important to keep our town clean. And I go to all the CSD meetings. I'm also gonna discuss this at the CSD meetings because our center medians are full of litter too. And we pay somebody to take care of that and it's not being taken care of. But anyway, I appreciate you listening to me on the phone, but you were right. I should come to something like this to explain my concerns. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Lenny, appreciate it. Anyone else present in the conference room?
I was going to ask about that. I know that we had raised that concern. So like Silver Springs Parkway is a relatively new road. And the year they opened it, by the time they opened, because they had that last mile section, the weeds in the center medians were, like 4 or 5 feet tall. And I think we raised that, they were looking for a tentative map extension to their project over that. And so we raised the question, hey, what's the maintenance of that road look like? Is it a zone of benefit when as the houses get built, the funding will come along? Or I don't think there's really an answer. I know that you guys talked to I'm pointing at John, sorry, that it did come up. And strangely, within the next week, the intersections were knocked down, but not the main roadway. But it's like that in all the medians.
It shouldn't be like that though. When a citizen calls, I at least expect a phone call back. And I understand if they're overwhelmed, if Tahoe's busy, but I shouldn't have to call my supervisor to get something done. They should respect when the citizen calls and at least say, we're gonna go out there and take a look at it. My other question is that I've never really understood since I've lived here. We have this beautiful town center. We have a
You got a microphone because people can't hear you. if you
So
move
just grab that
away,
little
so-
box, Lenny.
Yeah.
We have this, I've never understood this. We have a beautiful town center. We have this gorgeous, nice wide median for two medians long all the way down to White Rock. It's never been landscaped. Why doesn't the county, if it's I know it's the counties, why don't they give it to CSD and let them landscape it? Town center's a beautiful place and you've got these dirt medians. We need to start thinking about beautifying the city, whether we become a city or remain unincorporated. We need to do things to keep this town clean and beautiful.
So there's two things on the medians. I know the CSD's been working for a couple of years looking at a commercial sort of LLAD type of thing to fund that. That's a lot of dollars. And I don't know how many business property owners are going to sign on to do it, right? That's the thing. You got to get them to vote for it. The other thing is that when we were talking to the Capital Southeast Connector, JPA, their design for the segment in El Dorado County included landscaping, but DOT told them, hey, we can't have any landscaping because we can't maintain it. It's too expensive. But then so they want stamped concrete. But you still end up with the weeds though. So thank you for doing what you do as a volunteer, and also for you and your wife both jumping in to do that. And I guess maybe when we talk at the CSD meeting on Thursday, maybe there's an opportunity for some more volunteers to help you. You seem to have a passion for it, so let's see if we can get some more people. Okay.
Anyone else present in the conference room have a comment for our open forum?
I just want to say one thing too. I've seen on the Nextdoor groups, because they were complaining about the post office, and there was groups every week that would go and clean that up too. So maybe that could be a way to get a group of people.
Everyone has to live area that kind of like, well, Amazon, Blackstone's all open arms, but now they're all too quiet when we're talking about the golf course. So people need to think about the entire community, not just one section.
Yeah. Adopt a road, whatever. There's been all those kind of programs, but then people turn over, people get to the point they just can't physically do it anymore, and it just kind of waffles away. But thank you again, Lenny. We do have one comment, looks like online, from the Institute for Gender Partnership.
Actually, John, it's Rayona Sharpnack. That's my company. I wasn't aware that
Okay.
the logo went up there. Anyway, as you may remember, I'm a grateful resident of Stonegate Village and a champion for democracy.
Yep.
And I apologize that I don't remember exactly what was on today's agenda, so I just want to note 3 topics that I hope, if you don't talk to them today, that you will maybe next time.
Okay,
First one is the status of the old golf course, that ongoing thing. I forget what we
yep.
call
We're going
it.
to talk to that a little bit. Yep.
Great. So there's that. Second is there currently a process in place for avoiding what happened with the Amazon distribution center debacle where, it was pretty much of a cluster by the time we finished, but seemed like there could have been a more regulated way of taking the conversation through the process with the citizens, including the planning commission, all of that. So was there a postmortem done on that and any?
Yes, there's been some
Okay.
lessons learned analysis done. There's a determination that's been published that we can forward to you, and there is work that's been started in terms of amending the zoning ordinance. So the zoning
Great.
ordinance is going to take several months to get done, but when it's done, it will be probably excluding any large fulfillment warehouse centers, and we have to determine what large means. But
Yeah.
that's all in discussion with planning, so there will be something forthcoming on that. But there has been a determination letter published by the Director of Planning and Building that we can forward to you, so that'll give you some information.
Yeah, that'd be great if Cindy can send that to me. And then the last thing is there a clear and available process for the whole Costco with apartments? Today was the first time I saw the word with apartments, approval, planning, all that stuff. So those are my 3 topics.
Okay, and I'm going to discuss that a little bit when we get to that part of it, because I got an update today from our planning department. And and I know APAC is very interested in that as well. So we will discuss that a little bit later this evening.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so not seeing anyone else. Did you see anybody else on there that I missed? No. Okay. So with that, I want to thank everybody for the public comment, and we're going to move on to item 4, which is always one of the most appreciated parts of our meetings, and that's a guest speaker, where we get to hear about things that are happening either with El Dorado County, within a nonprofit. In this case, it's with our state assembly. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Joe Patterson, our new state assemblyman, or relatively new this recent term. And I'm happy to say that I've seen several pieces of proposed legislation he's brought forward. It's gotten a lot of response. Some of them got some favorable votes. But I appreciate the effort you put into it, because it's one of those thankless jobs that somebody isn't out there pushing for the right things to represent, in particular, rural counties, rural communities. Then it's awful tough to make much headway when you get down to Sacramento, downtown, right? So it's my pleasure to welcome Joe, and he can give us a little bit of his background if you'd like, and then just talk about some of the things he has sponsored this last year and where he sees it going in the next phase of the legislative cycle. Yes, please. Or you can sit if you want with a microphone in front of you. We just need to make sure you have a microphone. But
Okay, great.
your
Yeah.
choice. Yeah.
Well, hopefully this works. I'm kind of facing the group here as well. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Mr. Supervisor, and everybody being here. Just came back, just drove up from the swamp just now in Sacramento, and took last week off, which was nice. All the committees that I sit on are on Tuesdays. So Tuesday was 4th of July, obviously, so my family and I just came back on late Saturday night from a nice trip and back at it this week. So, but I'm mostly excited about the next month because I'll just be in the district, so be more available. I won't have to spend so much time in Sacramento, but just a little bit about myself. Haven't met some of you, haven't had an opportunity to meet most people. Have a lot of work to do with that, and so that's why I'm looking forward to the next month. But just personally about me, I have 4 kids, live in Rockland, where I served on the city council for 6 years. Been married to my wife, Colleen, who I like to say is the breadwinner in my house, and affords me the opportunity to do what I'm doing. But we've lived in Placer County since 2008. I went to Sac State. So I've been sort of in this area, I guess, for 23 years now. I'm from Napa originally. And, I really love particularly the suburbs, if you will. I venture to say, I don't want to say Sacramento, but, that seems to be the biggest city close to us. And so, we've been married for now 13 years and 4 kids, 10 to 2. And so we get all the sports activities, and life's going a little crazy right now with all 4 kids. And but as I said, I was on the Rockland City Council for 6 years. That was interesting. Just being here and listening to some of the comments was good. It kind of makes me miss being in local government, because you are closest to people and you can make changes quicker. I know being on a county board of supervisors, you're one of 5, obviously, and on the city council, we're one of 5. Being on a city council, all 5 people, at least in Rockland, represented the whole city. So everybody had the same sort of interests in mind. Now, counties aren't set up the same way. And, makes things a little bit different, because obviously you represent a certain area and maybe the other 4 have different ideas. You all have different ideas, and you have to come together to work on the issue. But when we get a customer, if you will, of the government come in and say that they have concerns about something, what was interesting about Rockland is all 5 were sort of zeroed in on that. And so that made things, I think, sometimes a little bit easier. But by the way, on the Caltrans, definitely call my office, and I'll call the director myself, and that's what we're here for. That's really what I want to do on my job is, the state agencies are responsive to legislators. It's actually been kind of surprising to me how responsive they are. But, EDD, DMV, Caltrans, obviously they're not going to pave a road just because I asked them, but surprisingly, they've moved projects up that we've pressured them on. So we definitely want to address that issue on Caltrans property, and more than happy to do it. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the state, and then I'll talk about what I've been working on. But we just passed the state budget. Hopefully nobody really pays attention to these things on everyday basis, because it will drive you crazy what happens in Sacramento. But we did pass the budget. I do sit on 2 of the budget subcommittees in the main budget committee. And what's interesting through that process is, even though being a Republican, we're what we say the super minority party, you can have an influence in what happens on the subcommittee process. I think some of the bigger decisions are made by, the Democratic leaders and the governor, but on things to get funded, big programs, little programs, we're able to have influence there. So, for example, the governor last year made a proposal to fund $60 million towards foster care program, CASA programs, if anybody's familiar with those. And then just 6 months later, proposed cutting the second and the third installment of that $60 million, so 40 of the 60 million. And, we raised a lot of, because people in foster care are basically wards of, the state is their guardian. And we fought that battle. Out of all the things to cut in the budget, all the waste that goes on in the state budget, you're going to pick on foster kids. It was crazy. So we were able to get that back in the budget, and that was approved. So that was nice. But I just want to go over some of the slightly depressing things, just so people know what's going on a little bit in the budget. It was approved really outside of any public input. The big deal points of the budget, has to be in print for 3 days, for 72 hours. But really the deal between the governor and the legislative leaders, the public wasn't involved in that process, and 118 legislators weren't involved in that process either. So that's kind of the sad part about the process. What it did do is it's added more fees onto all energy prices, which I think has been very problematic for people in our community here. More funding to homeless programs, which philosophically not against, but there were no accountability measures attached to that, which is what we've been calling for for a long time because we spent $20 billion and homelessness has gone up. And 5 years ago, the state really didn't spend any money on homelessness, right? So to spend $20 billion and not really have anything to show for it was a concern to us. So they went ahead and funded that, mostly to big cities, by the way. And I understand homelessness is largely in some of these bigger cities, but we have it too, right? And we want to be able to address homelessness as well. The gas tax, as anybody who knows, just went up on July 1st. We did try to make a move to stop that. It went up 8%. But I think the biggest problematic thing for me when I was on a city council anyways, and I don't know exactly how it works for the counties, but only 20% of the gas tax money paid for by Rockland residents actually came back to the city of Rockland. The other 80% is going to all sorts of other things that some of it were deals made to have the gas tax increase in the first place, special projects and things like that. But, you know, it's interesting, when I was driving back from Oregon on Saturday, it was so crazy. Right when you cross into California, it was actually shocking because it's not the same way in Nevada. And I think some of that's because of the snow kind of messes up roads on both sides of the state line. But when you came, I mean, the second you cross into California, the roads went from, you know, nice to really not nice. And it was an instant change. And it's not like the weather was, you know, different in the 5 feet that it changed suddenly. But a lot of that money, the accountability of where that money is going is really crazy. But I just think we have the highest gas taxes in the nation. It's going to go up every single year. Every year it's going up. This year it went up 4 cents, but it's going to go up every single year. And, you know, it doesn't come back. And I think that's a really big problem. Just a couple other quick things. The speaker, we recently have a new speaker of the assembly. Doesn't usually mean a lot to, you know, most people that I know, including, I mean, if you ask most people in my family, they really don't care about the speaker. But it does change the dynamic of what's going to happen in the legislature, just because his politics and who's in charge of various committees, that is going to change with the new speaker. A lot of issues going on in public safety right now that I'm very, very concerned about, that I think everybody should know. And it is the constant trend. This is particularly towards police and sheriffs. I'm sure you all heard about the canine dog bill that would effectively ban canines from doing police work. That bill got held, but there was another bill, it was AB 93, that would stop consent searches from police officers. They pull you over. Hey, do you mind if I check your car? You know, would you mind? And it's a consent. The person can say no. The legislature or a legislator was trying to ban that. Now, he did withdraw his bill, and it's become what's called a 2-year bill. But I think the bigger problematic thing, it actually doesn't matter what the bill did, is this trend to really attack police officers and the, you know, the profession, if you will, and really sow this distrust with the law enforcement community. And I think that is problematic for a whole host of reasons. But, you know, if you get pulled over in a car, are you going to automatically, not us, of course, nobody in this room, but are you going to have more animosity because, you know, the state leaders are telling you that police officers, that consent searches are dangerous and we need to stop them. And so I know in the city of Rockland, you know, which is a beautiful city, but we were having issues already hiring police officers. We get a lot of transfers from other departments that wanted to come in, but you know, that's been kind of problematic in that. A couple of things that I'm working on that is near and dear to my heart. I am working on a bill to both Placer and El Dorado counties have been victims of massive wildfires the last couple of years. I actually own property in El Dorado County. Nobody knows better than this building right here, about how detrimental it's been to our communities. But I tried to do, been working with some fire agencies, but trying to just allow forest clearing without doing an environmental document. So right now you have private property owners and even state property owners that you have to go through and get a CEQA document to thin the forest. And that slows down the process if it ever even happens. But it's so non-controversial that even Governor Newsom proposed this by executive order to clear some, I think it was like 90,000 acres or something. And he didn't have a lot of success doing that, but he did propose it. They did clear some forests. And so I proposed legislation, hey, let's do it statewide. Local responsibility areas and state responsibility areas. I couldn't even get a hearing on the bill because the bill goes through a particular committee. It's called the Natural Resources Committee, where the chair really sides with environmentalists. But nothing pollutes the air more than having massive wildfires in our community. So we're still working on that. We're pressing that. That will probably hopefully, knock on wood, get a hearing in January. But we're also working on a lot of public safety issues that came from our district attorney. We've been working with the District Attorneys Association on both fentanyl and early release of inmates. We have, I've introduced 4 pieces of legislation on fentanyl, actually, and I've gotten 3 of them out of committee. I'm the only Republican to get a bill out of the Assembly Public Safety Committee and the Senate Public Safety Committee now that deal. One is a probation program. If you're convicted of fentanyl, you have to take a fentanyl-specific probation program rather than just some random probation class. The other one require schools to carry Narcan. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are trying to water it down, but it is a bipartisan bill. These are all bipartisan. The third one would be an education notice in schools. Every school student, parent or guardian would receive a notice about the dangers of opioids in schools. So it'd just be a notice, that goes out. 6 million students in California. If only 1% of people read the notice, it's going to have a big impact, because I think just knowing what fentanyl is a big issue. We've all had people unfortunately die in our community from fentanyl poisoning. They didn't know they were taking fentanyl. We're working on a lot of other issues. I'm very excited. One thing I do have to say, if you have legislative ideas from the community, pretty much my entire legislative package, I introduced way too many bills. But pretty much every single one came from a resident or an elected official. We also do budget requests every year. I have no shame in taking the tax dollars that you already pay and bringing it back to our community. I did put in some requests for El Dorado County, but if there are things that need to be funded here that would help, more than happy to put in that request as well. So happy to answer any questions if you want me to take some questions or not. But it's really a great thing. This is a great role. Just want to say a couple things that I'm working on. I'm on the Aging and Long-Term Care Committee. I serve on that committee. Everything that comes through, it's pretty non-controversial, actually. And I'm the vice chair of the Privacy Committee, which oversees basically tech companies and anything that has to do with privacy and your own privacy. I'm also the vice chair of the Housing Committee as well. I'm also on the Health Committee, the Business and Professions Committee, which is a very broad committee. And both budget committees, as I've mentioned. I'm also California's representative, actually on fire issues for the Western United States. I'm the speaker. It's a Republican, could have chosen a Republican or a Democrat. So I'll be representing California to this subcommittee. I'm on the Emergency Management Joint Committee as well. They haven't had a meeting yet. So I'm also on the Fentanyl Joint Task Force or Joint Committee as well. So happy to take any questions and
Absolutely. So I
just
have
don't
one
answer
else.
any tough one. Don't
We're
ask
going
any
to
tough
ask the leadership
ones.
team, but I have one in particular. Since you mentioned you're involved with the fire now, we have a forthcoming fire summit to talk about what we can do to look at consolidation of fire districts within El Dorado County. Because we have several that are achieving an ABA rate of less than 10%, and they're not doing well. Have problems with buying equipment, staffing, capitalization, acquiring personnel, hiring, et cetera, et cetera. Would you be open to attending that and maybe providing some perspective on where we can look from the state to get some guidance on how we consolidate things, because it always comes down to money.
Yeah. Well, and also when I was on the Rockland City Council, I was on the LAFCO.
Okay,
And we dealt with, actually, we had I guess, a merger between two fire agencies while I was on the LAFCO.
Okay.
You know, and on the city council, we're dealing with joint dispatch and, you know, just trying to figure out all those things. And also South Placer Fire District out there, you know, they've been unfortunately having to close a station, funding issues and things like that in a pretty, you know, not a community that's, you know, hurting, I guess you could say. And so that's kind of sad to see. And I think we have these issues in both counties. Obviously, we have several fire districts here and agencies. So if I'm available, I'd love to come.
okay, we'll
to
send you an
that.
invite.
Yeah,
We'll make sure you
so-
get invited to it. We
And
haven't
if
scheduled
they're-
the date yet. but-
Yeah, and you know, we'll definitely send, even if I can't be there for some reason, we'll send somebody to
Okay,
it.
good.
But if there are things we need to do at the state level, I mean, I don't understand, you would know best what, you know, the internal issues might be, right? That might come out of that. Or maybe there's agreement, but you need some legislation on it, or you need a piece of legislation that says, hey, these two will be coming together. Those are all things we definitely want to be engaged in and help. I mean, at the end of the day, fires aren't going to stop, unfortunately. I mean, we saw how big the Caldor fire got, how fast it was, and, you know, the coordination with the state. By the way, as a side note, I did ask California OES about, you know, just the discussion, you know, the interaction between FEMA and also the Forest Service, and, you know, how their impression was on making decisions on these massive fires. And I think, you know, obviously the fire teams may have differing opinions on that, but I mean, she seemed to acknowledge, hey, look, it could be improved, you know, so there's a lot that we can do, but I'm not the expert in that, so it's gonna take,
Yeah, I
you guys tell me
understand.
what you need.
The fact
you know,
we've got some
so.
history in it, some knowledge, and some interest, I think that would be important to make sure you get an invitation, because we're going to open up the box and talk about a lot of different things, including CSA service areas, right? County service areas. What do we do to try to look at how we reconstruct some of those to try to generate the revenues and stuff? But you need to recognize in El Dorado County, at least on the western slope, all of our fire services also talk with our EMS. It's directly tied with EMS. So you really have to look at both pieces. There's an emergency medical response, and then you have to look at the fire response. So they have to play together. We think we have a great system. We just don't have enough resources coming from primarily the state to help pay for those things, because we have a lot of SRA area, but we ended up being first responders into a lot of SRA, because obviously with CAL FIRE stations, they're not as close. But the mutual aids, the auto aids, and the chief can talk about a lot more. We've been very constructive, I think, at working together, but as the population grows, it just becomes more and more difficult to get that response time, keep the response time we have, or improve it.
Yeah. You know, there are a lot of issues around this, and I
yeah.
dealt with it a lot on the
Yep.
city council, but, you know, this wall time issue has been something, you know, Rockland, for example, had 3 fire stations and 3 companies at any given time. And we had a private ambulance service, and, you know, but if we responded first, and then our guys will get an entire company taken offline for hours, you know? And so that was legislation actually that came through the legislature to basically say, hey, look, you gotta get these guys in and out of the hospital quicker.
Hospitals have to accept them, and so
but-
EMS
yeah.
can leave, yeah.
Yeah, but that's been a smaller issue, I think, up here than maybe Placer County, because I think, you know, like Marshall, for example, you know, doesn't have, Rockland and Roseville, they have a lot of retirement communities where, you know, maybe like an Alzheimer's patient, you know, my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's, you know, where if there's a fall, for example, you know, the staff may not be able, you know, they're going to call emergency services, right? And so that took a lot of response time, and, you know, you want to take those seriously, obviously, you know, but how do we best manage that? But yes, I would love to be there. I hope, if the date's not set, I would love to work it out on my schedule so I can be there.
Okay, because ultimately, I think AB8 is what's got to be looked at, because there's not been any revisions of that. When these districts were set up years and years ago, you know, with a vision for what they're going to be in maybe in 5 years. Well, we're 25 years past that for the most part. or
Yeah.
more. And it's changed totally in terms of what communities are. And that distribution is no longer enough to keep some of the fire service agencies operating.
Yeah.
So we really have to look at the big picture view as well. But I'm not necessarily saying we want to propose legislation at this point. We're asking our fire chiefs to kind of take the lead and present to us what they think the primary alternatives are. But right now, we're looking at maybe consolidation into 2 or 3 type of unified fire districts within El Dorado County. But that's a big undertaking. As you know, when you try to unify any 2 groups of people, they want their own elected bodies, they want representation on the board, they want community identity. So I'm gonna leave it at that. We'll
Yeah.
have that discussion, but thanks
Yeah.
for your response.
Okay, great.
We'd like to talk to you too about it, because I think what Supervisor Heidel is saying is if you can get an engine company on scene of a fire when it's a quarter acre, it doesn't get to 300,000 acres. So sustaining the rural engine company staffing model, Placer County has the same problem. It's not unique. El Dorado County does. It'd be good for you to have some of those slides as you're having these larger conversations in a broader group, that you understand that rural staffing problem that exists, and it's really around funding.
Oh,
So-
absolutely. Yeah.
But maybe we can talk offline and share. some
I would love to. This is, very early on, I developed a relationship with the fire groups just all over, in my community when I was on city council, and just kind of became ingrained on what was going on. Obviously, what happens in Placer and El Dorado County, different counties, but you do have the fragmentation of different, fire departments and districts, and in some of the, once you get into the hills. And by the way, just because it's not my district, by the way, once you get into Grizzly Flats and all those sorts of things, those may not be in my district, but I've kind of always looked at myself as, I only represent Placer and El Dorado County, and I feel like some of my colleagues who also represent El Dorado County might live further away, and so I can be here really quick. I love to address the issues, and whether it's in my district or not, I look at myself as serving all of El Dorado County, so.
We can't leave discussion fire without talking about insurance, fire insurance and
Oh,
stuff.
gosh.
That's a
Yeah.
whole nother discussion.
No, I mean, we
We're
could be
not
here
gonna
all
get
day
into
on
that.
that.
But when
Yes.
response time diminishes, when the number of firefighters, the number of engines response diminishes, those rates are gonna go high, and people are gonna get to the point they can't afford to live where they afford now and just barely get by, because those insurance rates are gonna mean
Yeah.
they have to make a tough decision. Either they have to move and try to sell the property, if it's insurable, and will close escrow, or they have to go at full risk on whatever the value of that property is. And those are not good choices. So we'll get into that discussion
Oh,
later, but
well, can I just mention one thing on that?
Sure, go ahead.
You can't bring something up like that. I mean,
all right, go ahead.
Obviously I get a ton of calls on this. And, it's, a lot of people are losing their insurance, having to go on the FAIR plan. And the thing that kind of drives me nuts is the legislature, because of population, is dominated by people in the Bay Area and LA. And this is not a personal statement against them or anything like that. But when I explain to some of them how water gets from, the hills down into, forget even getting into the Delta, just how it gets down, I say, hey, look, you have to describe, basically it comes down, straws, wooden straws down the side of the hill. When a fire burns through that thing, it's gone, and, but, they really don't understand the issues that we're facing out here. And so try to explain to them, and I am hoping it's a blessing in disguise, a huge disguise right now, that these insurers are saying, hey, we can't cover it anymore, because it's making such big news that maybe somebody will pay attention, because I'm really concerned that, your insurance is going from $2,000 or $600 to $6,000, or something like that. And by the way, if you move to the FAIR plan, you don't have all the coverages you had if you have normal insurance. And so, the insurance commissioner, I don't know what he's doing, but it's not helping with this issue, and they got to get on it. And I suspect you're going to see a lot more movement, because it's happening in suburban neighborhoods, and even as you get closer to the more urban areas. So, but the bottom line is just another one, State Farm, just the other day.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's or farmers. So State Farm, then farmers, you have Nationwide. I mean, you could list all the companies that are leaving, and who's going to be left to insure.
Some of them are staying, they're just not taking out any new policies, right?
Correct.
They're freezing their
Yeah.
policy holders at this point, and
Yeah.
so it is what it is. But
Yeah.
enough on that. We've talked about enough fire, but we'll follow up with you for sure on. I
Great.
didn't want to ask any other leadership team members have any questions for the assemblyman. Yes.
You're diminishing tobacco tax dollars.
Well, actually, our funding is declining,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you. What would I do without you? Our funding is diminishing, but I noticed that you were doing the infant formula stockpiling and, bill. And I think that that's super important in our county at any rate. When COVID hit, we found out there was a lot more food insecurity than we realized that we had before, and infant formula was actually part of that. And so we've been working hard to kind of rearrange food supply, and infant formula is part of that, and it's important. So
Well, thanks. Well, having a 2-year-old that was born during the pandemic,
you know how hard it
in
was.
the NICU, and we couldn't find, like I said, my wife's a working mom, and I think, being able to breastfeed is,
Not only,
it was tough, it didn't work for us. So, finding the
absolutely.
formula was tough. I understood it. Yeah, we need to start, it's a critical resource.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, members present, yes.
Is this one?
Yeah. Just give her that one, that'll be fine. Yep. Thank
Okay.
you, thank you.
Hi,
Go ahead,
my
Pat.
name's Patricia Baird. I'm a longtime resident here in El Dorado Hills. I'm very concerned about gun safety laws, and I would like to know if you are willing to sponsor any gun safety laws, or have you supported gun safety laws in the assembly?
So, what's interesting about these, first of all, I have, as I mentioned many times, 4 kids that, I don't want to be concerned about sending my kids to school every day. I take that very seriously. The schools in my community, the school that my kid goes to, basically anybody can walk on campus at any time because it was built during a time where the concerns weren't what they are now, I think, with what's going on with shootings. And now if you look at new schools being built in my community, they are secured access all the way around. And it could be the same design school, but secure access all the way around. In fact, my chief of staff, who's right back here, she's actually a school board member herself. So, I think about that a lot. Just to be honest with you, a lot of the legislation coming out on gun safety is, it's already constructed in a way that it's made partisan before it even hits the press. And that's what's been disappointing. So I did actually sponsor legislation in this area. 2/3 of all mass shooters in the United States are 2/3 of all mass shootings are committed by people with a history of domestic violence. And so I sponsored legislation that said, if you might remember, actually during the shutdowns in COVID, there was a mass shooting in downtown Sacramento where the man had gotten out of prison early, which is a whole separate thing, but he got out of prison early, half his sentence, less than half his sentence, goes out, kills 6 people downtown Sacramento. His crime that he was in prison for was felony domestic violence. And it's very brutal if I explain what he did to his partner. He should have been in prison longer. So what I did is I authored a bill that would say, hey, if you're convicted of domestic violence, felony domestic violence, which is the most brutal type of domestic violence, all of it's bad, but this is the worst of the worst, that you would not be eligible for early release. And it got, because 2/3 of all mass shooters have a history of domestic violence. So we did get a hearing, which was interesting, went down in a partisan party line vote. But what was it? Even the San Francisco Chronicle, which isn't exactly, some Republican talking piece, even the San Francisco Chronicle opined that Democrats should consider my legislation to reduce mass shootings and, died on a party line vote. So to quickly answer your question, yes, I'm willing to consider everything. The thing that drives me nuts is it's only their legislation or nothing. So despite mine having, I even got calls from Democrats, by the way. I got calls from Democrats. Hey, I want to co-author your legislation. I want to co-author your legislation. So it's not like it was really a partisan thing, but it's the power players that chair those committees that decide on whether stuff's going to get out. So yes, I will seriously consider every piece of legislation that comes out. Most of these don't come before me until they hit the floor. You know, it just depends on what it is, what it looks like. I will say fentanyl is actually the leading cause. It's more deaths from fentanyl than gun violence in California. And, you know, that could partly be because of, you know, the gun laws we already have on the books right now. So I'm kind of tempted to say, hey, what are the other avenues that we can address? For example, in the last 10-year period, only one CCW holder had killed somebody, you know, but via crime, non-self-defense, and was sentenced to prison for that. Only one CCW holder. And so to me personally, it's never really made sense that we go after the CCW holder, but not the criminals. So we have a whole package of legislation actually to get guns out of criminals' hands. And all of them died in a party line vote, every single one of them. And yes, you had Democrats support them, you know, but the chairs of the committees didn't support them. I think we need to get guns out of the hands of criminals. But I'm willing to consider other pieces of legislation, you know, depending on what it does, because yes, I am very concerned about it. Yeah.
It's interesting as I'm listening to you, you brought up 3 subjects that are all intertwined in gun control. So one is school safety. That's ultimately what we want. Another is when you're talking about domestic violence. And I can tell you in El Dorado County from the community needs assessments that have been done here over the last 10 years from Marshall Barton and even our own county health, the 3 biggest issues in El Dorado County are family violence, behavioral health, and substance use. And they all 3 go hand in hand. And then you have the issues of guns, which is a hot topic. It would be really wonderful if we could put brains in the room that would say, let's do a package, a balance that just doesn't attack guns, because that's where we're dying. We're dying on the partisan lines of, we're not making any movement because it's a yes or no. But wouldn't it be great if there was a subcommittee or a task force that looked holistically at gun violence so that we could find a balanced measure? Because you can't just go after folks that have one thing wrong with them. But if we could do a package that allowed us to look at each piece and what role they play in it, we might get more traction.
Yeah.
And so I just appreciate your bringing up all 3 of those things, because I think it's a complicated issue. I don't think
Yeah.
it's as easy as just one or the other. And I'd go sit on that task force. I think
Yeah.
that would be an interesting way to look at gun control.
Well, thanks for that. It is a complicated, I think with a lot of these issues, they're multi-pronged. Homelessness is another one that's multi-pronged. You know, and we have to look at all sorts of avenues to address it, you know, so. Got a lot of thoughts on homelessness too, but this wasn't about homelessness, so. But,
Yeah,
thank you
they're
for that.
connected somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Yes, Greg. Please introduce yourself. I didn't know if it was, if I should be introducing you or not. But anyway.
You know, I'm here to learn, really.
Yeah.
But I'm running for the District 1 supervisor. And so I
And retired?
hired California Highway Patrol.
There you go.
And we are this is my wife, Rita. And we're small business owners. We own Sierra Laundry, 3 locations, Citrus Heights, Cameron Park, and El Dorado Hills. I'm not coming here for that.
Yep.
I want to thank you for your passion for crime and being aware, because you are aware. As I said, I'm retired from the CHP. I think there already is a law on the books that says if you're convicted of 273.5, which is domestic violence, you cannot own a gun legally. Thank you. But I did have one question. There was a bill or a proposal to outlaw traffic stops for minor violations. And do you know where that is?
I don't know. We'll check and I'll
All right.
send you a note. Yeah, I mean, that's, you know.
That's the type of stuff coming out of the Capitol right now.
Yeah, and it's, you know, obviously, you know better than I do that that's where you get a lot of the, just the other day in my town, little Rockland, which isn't a small town anymore, 71,000 people, but it's not like it's a metropolis. You know, it's a safe community. Somebody was caught with 20,000 fentanyl pills, you know, enough to kill 20,000 people. And, you know, a lot of this comes from traffic stops. And so, so these ideas are crazy. They make it hard to police. They make it harder to, you know, just people, you know, I mean, they want, I guess, just police officers to be community stewards or something.
Not sure what they want to be, but every law that's coming out of Sacramento in the last few years has done nothing but support crime and embolden the criminals and not taking into consideration any victim's rights. And
Yeah.
it's just something has to change. So appreciate your efforts. I know it's a steep uphill battle.
Well, we're not going to go down this total rabbit hole right now, but when I actually used to be a staff person in the Capitol for a guy who's now the district attorney of Orange County. But that was the time where we were, where Schwarzenegger was governor, but there was a 3-judge panel that decided that California's prisons were too crowded. So they capped prison population at 137.5%. And, you know, we got involved in the lawsuit and went all the way to the Supreme Court. We didn't stop it, obviously, but so I toured a lot of prisons then. I was actually present at San Quentin during the last execution. I didn't go to watch. Warren asked me if I wanted to watch. I was like, no, I'm good. You know, so I was at a lot of prisons, and they were overcrowded. People were sleeping in gyms and things like that. But, you know, now with all they've done is they've pushed the people who used to be hardened inmates at state prison down to the county level. And now the counties have the hardened inmates. And then now when you pull over a guy or gal who's, you know, got not even a low-level offense. I mean, it could still be a felony offense. Give them a ticket and tell them to show up at court someday. And I think that that's the idea. Actually, I'm meeting with the SACB tomorrow on an editorial board interview on something. And there's this perception that, well, sending people to prison doesn't you know, stop people from committing crimes. Or it doesn't show, there's no evidence that shows that, you know, it'll reduce them coming back to prison when they get out, because 99% of people get out of prison. Well, you know, perhaps that's true. First of all, we need to invest in rehabilitation programs in our prison. Spent just came out today, $600 million in prison rehabilitation programs, and basically nothing to show for it. No data, no nothing. But the other thing is, you know what? Prison is also for punishment. And so if you're going to be coming into our community and killing people, you're going to go to prison, and you're not going to serve half your sentence. You should be serving the whole sentence that the people of El Dorado County convicted you to. And so this whole like concept that we need to just let people out early without, you know, any rehabilitation is crazy. It's crazy to me. So there's such a huge problem with, there's a different, I would say the majority of people in the legislature have a different view of what policing should be than what I grew up with. So,
Thank you for that.
yeah.
Very good. Last call, anyone in the conference room, because we have some online. So let's go to our Zoom participants. Let's go to Wendy May first. I think you had your hand up first, Wendy May.
Yes, thank you very much, Supervisor Heigl, and thank you, Assemblyman Patterson. I just want to ask you to please explain your statement that one does not get the same coverage with the California Fair Plan when the Fair Plan is a policy that, for lack of a better way of putting it, sir, is a rider per se. You have two separate policies. You still have your primary policy that covers your structures. So when you say you don't get the same coverage with the Fair Plan, can you please explain to me what you mean?
Well, some people can't get primary coverage, so they have to move to the Fair Plan as their only source of coverage, which has a lot, it's not covering a lot of other items. And I'd be more than happy to, and we'll provide it, John, you email out on what coverages are not included in the Fair Plan. So, you know, people who are losing insurance or don't have insurance and want to get insurance, if you just have the Fair Plan, it's not going to cover. And in fact, if you can get the right, there's a separate insurance that people have to get if you have the Fair Plan, if you can even get it.
Right.
So I'll get more details on that and provide a clear answer for you, and we'll email it to Supervisor Hydal to send out.
I think my understanding is Fair Plan is primarily the fire insurance, but if you have other personal losses, theft, flooding, those kinds of things, you have to have a separate coverage. So that's kind of where it breaks down. And so that substantially increases the total cost. You can't just say, I have full coverage now with my insurer, and when I get the Fair Plan, I've got equivalent coverage, because you don't. You're going to pay a lot more, typically a lot more, and then you have to bring on a writer, another insurance company, to cover the other things. And by the time you're done, the people I've talked to, as a minimum, it's double what they were paying before, and sometimes it's up to 10 times what they were
Yeah,
paying before.
for example,
So-
the liability coverage
Yes.
alone, you know,
Right.
with, you have a trampoline on your property, kid breaks a
Personal
leg,
liability.
you're
Yep,
gonna,
yep.
that's not gonna be covered under the Fair Plan.
Yep. So we'll provide some more information on
Okay.
that to try to answer that a little bit more in detail, Wendy. So we'll get that to you. And then Rayona, you had your hand raised as well?
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for coming to speak with us. And I noticed a kind of refreshingly modest or just pointed amount of bipartisanship in your presentation and so forth. And as I said before, I'm a big fan of democracy, and I think democracy only happens through bipartisanship and through civil society and civil conversations and stuff. And I wonder if you have any plan for helping El Dorado County or, you know, our area. I mean, I'd sign up for District 1 being a pilot to forge greater, you know, civil conversations, bipartisanship. Let's work together. You know, I'm just done. I'm so over with the fighting and the, you know, just all the stuff you described that happens in the state legislature. But I think we got to start local to try and solve that.
Yeah, you know, I see this, I'm on all the social media groups and actually, I think it was surprising to people, this, the Amazon warehouse.
Yeah, Project Frontier.
I happen
Yeah.
to be having lunch with representatives from Amazon one day. And I said, hey, you know, like there's this kind of this big deal in El Dorado Hills you might know about. And, you know, the people who work on government relations don't really, I mean, there's sites going everywhere. They don't really do the site-specific stuff. And so they didn't know about it. They looked into it. And like a week later, I got a text message from one of them saying, hey, we're pulling out of El Dorado Hills, which was the first acknowledgement that they were even a part of it. I mean, publicly anyways. But on the online forums, nobody really believed it. And they said, hey, you know, where did they send a statement to him, an email? No, it was literally a text message that they sent me, you know. But, you know, I was paying attention to the groups and the debates, and I'm in my own communities, groups and debates, and I see the fighting and the discourse. And in the legislature, you know, the discourse gets pretty negative sometimes. And, you know, I've definitely, people are sometimes, you know, we are a partisan organization. Everybody who runs for office in the legislature is a Republican or a Democrat. I am outnumbered by large amounts. And I figure if I want to solve problems, I at least have to be cordial with the people who are the chairs of the committees and things like that. So, for example, on these police bills, I can talk vehemently against them on the floor. But I don't make it personal. I mean, the person who proposed AB 93, the consent searches, he is from LA, and you know, he's a black man, and his perspective on growing up as a black man in LA is different than me as a white guy growing up in Napa. And you know, I acknowledge those differences when I spoke against it. But you can still be forceful in your opposition without being disrespectful to them personally. And so I try to take that tact in there, where some bills I'm the only person opposing. I mean, you know, the parental rights bills and the anti-parental rights bills, I'm the only person who gets up and speaks against them. But I think I still have respect of my colleagues because I can do it respectfully and not attack them personally. But in terms of sort of, you know, broader issues in our district and in El Dorado County, what's interesting about El Dorado County in particular is there's sort of different, you know, there's El Dorado Hills, and then there's, you know, different communities from El Dorado Hills to Tahoe. There's different communities within there. And then there's South Lake Tahoe, which is, you know, its own different community as well. So it's almost like you have subsets of communities within each other. But I think bringing people together and talking about issues, I actually think that's what organizations like this are for. These kinds of meetings to talk about the issues that come up, and you can have somebody that has very serious concerns, still very respectful about them, but isn't going to go away if they're not solved, you know? So.
So I don't see any more comments. So I will make one final comment. I'm also very pleased with your openness to talk across the aisle, particularly with our local senator, Marie Alvarado Gill. It seems like you have developed a good relationship with her. You're not going to agree on everything, but at least you can find some common ground that benefits the residents of El Dorado County and other areas that you can work on together. And I think it's that bipartisan participation and willing to have a little bit of compromise here and there that ultimately will move us in the right direction in terms of what most people want to see in this state. So kudos to you for doing that. I'm not sure everyone on either party is willing to kind of, basically look at a centric position on things and say, I'm open to hear your conversation. You can hear mine, and we can decide where we agree and where we disagree. But let's take the common ground that we can agree on and see if we can't get more participation and at least advance that part of it.
Yeah.
So very, very appreciative of your efforts to do that, and Marie's as well. I think it's a great relationship when people can become comrades on the things that are common to them, right?
She's great. And you know what? I would also say, she's in the majority party. So I'd just say, let's have her bring home the bacon as much as possible. And, but she's been really great. We represent a lot of the same area. We talk a lot on issues. The vast majority of things I deal with aren't partisan. If somebody comes to me with an issue, even in the legislature, it's nonpartisan. I mean, most of the issues are nonpartisan. It's really issue specific. If you hit certain issues, then it becomes partisan. You can probably guess what those issues are, but a lot of the issues aren't. Now, for her, I think, we have to, DMV issues, Caltrans issues, whatever. I mean, nobody really cares about the partisanship. We just got to make sure that our communities, stay safe and desirable places to live. And that's literally all I care about. I mean, all the stuff we're talking about in Sacramento, now you got me going on a tirade. All the stuff we got going on in Sacramento, I mean, I care about them, and it's an honor to be there and vote on these bills, but that is not why I ran. I ran to address the issues that we have here. So, but anyways, I'm gonna leave some business cards. Tiffany, my chief of staff, I'd love to address anything Caltrans. I love calling Caltrans. They're tired of hearing them from me by now. They had an issue on Highway 80 where they acknowledged the road they couldn't repair it. They couldn't repair it because of all the rain and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But they acknowledged in November that it was in disrepair. And I mean, we received, I think, 50 claims. We sent out an email and said, hey, if your windshield was damaged, she had like 3 broken windshields. I had 2, just our experience was 5 broken windshields. And so we started pressing Caltrans on this. We're still pressing them because government agencies don't want to grant claims ever. 0% of the time they get granted. And so we're still pressing them, but we're on first name basis. So I love to address the landscaping.
John, yeah.
I also did a stint in my retirement for Cal OES, and I worked on the Paradise Fire. And my job was to keep an eye on Caltrans. So I'd love to give you a little download myself on my way out. I'm actually moving to Texas, but yeah, I'd love to give you a little download maybe at some point.
All my great constituents need to stop moving to other states.
Oh.
Right?
I'm not doing it for politics. I'm doing it for kids. And grandkids. So.
That's awesome.
But,
Well, thanks a lot. We'll leave the number. When you email my office, by the way, I actually do respond. And we get a ton of emails, the public email address, my staff will draft the responses, and I go in there and change 100% of it and make it. So I get what's funny is I get a lot of bad emails from people that honestly, like just partisan people or you're terrible, you're Republican, I respond to them. Always nicely, of course.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
But it's really great to serve El Dorado County, and seriously, I look forward to being here more. And if there's anything we can do for you, and if I don't, if I have a different perspective on an issue, I'll let you know. I mean, there's no reason to sort of pile
Excellent.
around it, so.
Well, if you get the
All right, great, thank
opportunity,
you.
establish a local office in El Dorado Hills, and then
I'm
you
trying,
can
I am
be
trying
down
to do
somewhere
that,
close to our
actually.
senator.
The
We'll
state
have a
won't pay
one-stop
for
shop,
it.
right?
Yeah, so we'll just have to ask somebody to give me a little cubicle in their office. or
Okay, all right, we'll make it work somehow.
All right, thanks,
Yeah,
guys. I
thank you,
appreciate
Joe.
it.
Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to move on to supervisor communications, and I'm going to make this fairly quick again. There's nothing new to announce on Central, with the exception that the target date is now sometime between the middle of October and the end of the year to bring it back to the Board of Supervisors. There's still a lot of discussions going on with various participants in the activities. So hopefully we'll hear more of that as we get closer to October. So, yeah. Well, I usually get through all these and I'll ask anybody have any questions on it. So let me finish them up. That way I can kind of roll through them pretty quickly. Costco project, Secaupolis's development, which is on the east side, what I call the east side anyway, of Silver Valley Parkway. They've submitted new revised plans. I talked to them today about evidently not being on track it. That was a surprise.
It's still not on track.
Okay, so Kyle was gonna get a hold of his senior planner and find out why it's not out there, because
Yeah, we
they
got
clearly
the-
submitted, so.
We had the letter, the notification letter today, but there's no public documents yet.
Okay, so hopefully that'll happen quickly, because I did ask Kyle about it. He wasn't personally aware of it, but he was gonna talk to his senior planner and try to figure out why that didn't get out there if it wasn't out there, so I'll follow up with him as well. The third item, the 2023 strategic planning effort the counties undertook here a couple months ago continues. We've got an ad hoc working group finalizing their draft, and then we're gonna have follow-up meetings with the original group to kind of consolidate everything to make sure that that draft they come up with is consistent with what everybody ultimately would like to see. And then we're gonna have a public workshop to discuss it. We'll take in more public inputs to refine the draft and then ultimately come back to the Board of Supervisors. So the expectation on that is we would get it back as a board sometime in the late fall. So we're probably talking September, October, November, not quite into winter, but somewhere in that time frame. It just kind of depends on how quickly we can schedule these meetings, but we're trying to move through that. And I think most people, when they see that original draft, will recognize the differences between and be able to contrast where we are with our current strategic plan and where we're trying to move to. The new strategic plan is much more action-oriented, and it has more specific goals in terms of things that I think are really important to accomplish relative to objectives. So we're taking and refining some of the things that I think were a little bit too high-level wording in terms of motherhood statements, so to speak, and now we're trying to get down to the basics of what does this really mean in project-level terms? What are we going to accomplish there? So, and thanks to everybody who participated in that in the past. They were very, very helpful. Last item, our planning commissioner has decided he has to leave the state. And obviously, some people get to that point. I actually have been out of state looking at the possibility of moving out of state. So he's not alone. And but I wanted to just personally thank John for all of his hard work and dedication as both the planning commissioner, but also working with our community council. He's been a really major asset in terms of providing insight and experience and history, and bringing in people to the discussion was extremely helpful for us to understand what path has to be taken to advance things in the county as opposed to reaching roadblocks. And so all of that is much appreciated. We hate to see you go, but we recognize, that's your choice. And so we wish you the best in terms of your new ventures in Kerrville, Texas, right? So we'll be back. 50th birthday.
Eric said it online.
Right.
A couple times a year, so I may just come and harass you guys.
We have started interviews with the candidates. We ended up with 4 applicants for the commissioner seat. So John and I are participating in those together. We've completed one of those. We have 3 more tomorrow. So we'll get through all the interviews before his planning commission meeting on Thursday, have a chance to discuss pros and cons of each of the candidates, and then ultimately I'll make a selection and we'll get it on the Board of Supervisors agenda to make that appointment as quickly as we can.
Well, let me just also say, this is a rare, what goes on here is pretty rare. And so I appreciate John taking that on, because a lot of stuff is always associated with development stuff. So it's great to complement that with everything else that's happening in the community. It's an important issue. So I think serves the community well. So appreciate all of your participation in making success.
We've always had the agreement, we like to talk about things, discuss things, but I'm not going to tell him how to vote, and he's not going to tell me how to vote, right? It should be an independent determination on how you vote in any given situation, because the facts change, the presentation may influence things. So you can look at things in advance, but until you really get into the active discussions with the proponents and the planning staff, it's hard to determine where you're going to end up on some of those things. So that's why you need a lot of flexibility in determining, are you for or against a given project, and what conditions do you think may have to be added to that project on top of what the planning department is recommended to really make it solid for the community. But it's always looking at the community aspects of things and how do we do the best for the community. So again, thank you very much for your service, and yeah, we'll keep in communication and moving down the road. So with that, Lenny, you had a question on the first item? Yeah. Okay. You have a speaker? You have a microphone close to you? Thank you.
That's right enough.
Thanks. The planning commission voted 5-0 against the Central El Dorado Hills specific plan.
Right.
That should have went to the Board of Supervisors within 2 weeks to a month. It did not. Now, the perception that the public is getting is that the county is negotiating with Parker Development behind closed doors. Do you understand why they don't have confidence in the Board of Supervisors when this happens? And I have to tell you, I am tired of looking at those signs on El Dorado Hills Boulevard and Ridgeview. They need to come down
Project
now.
signs, yeah.
But if this project, if the county now is negotiating behind closed doors about Central El Dorado Hills, and a lot of people don't understand, that involves Ridgeview too. It's just not the golf course. If they are negotiating and they're changing anything about Central El Dorado Hills, that needs to go back to to position 1. It should not, they voted no, it goes to the Board of Supervisors. Now we hear they're negotiating behind closed doors.
Only a
This is-
development agreement. It's not a negotiation.
I don't
per
care.
se.
What they're saying is, well, if you give us so much money per house, we'll talk them into voting yes. That's the perception from the public. My thing is, it got voted no, it goes to the Board of Supervisors. If they change anything about Central El Dorado Hills, it needs to go back to the Planning Commission again. Don't you agree?
It depends on the degree of change.
Any
So-
change.
So I'll give you the example. They have been told recently that there needs to be an update on the greenhouse gas provisions within the CEQA. Is that something that should go back to the Planning Commission? A minor change associated with greenhouse gases and provisions, and it's really new laws that have
So
applied
what you're saying
in
is
the last 10 years.
So what you're saying, eventually they're going to come back with the same project that the Planning Commission.
I don't know what they're
voted
going
no.
to come back with.
That's what I'm saying. They should not be allowed to come back with a different project now. If it's a different project, even if they go, instead of a 15-acre park, we're going to give you a 20-acre park, it goes back to the
I
Planning
don't think
Commission and APAC.
there's anything in the project that's going to substantially change with the exception of terms in the development agreement.
And why do we have developer agreements? It's like the county is negotiating behind closed doors and there's no transparency. The public has no idea what you're negotiating for.
Comes public, which is the public hearing process, and actually before that, right, because it's posted in Legistar, whatever changes may be accomplished or not accomplished in the if the development agreement stays the same, there's no change at all. If something in that changes, then it could be, but the primary emphasis has been, how do we get the best recreational use of that 98-acre site? And we were hoping the CSD would get directly involved with that, and they have gotten involved to a certain extent. But nothing has been reached in terms of finality, in terms of an agreement. But there's a real opportunity to get some real good recreational use of that property if everybody can come together with a private-public partnership thing. And I'm not directly involved in those discussions. That's the development agreement team that's supposed to be doing that, right? But from my perspective, we had the 98-acre course taken away from the public for use. There needs to be similar recreational opportunities on that same property. And I'm not saying all 98 acres.
The entire 98 acres is zoned open space.
Open space, high-density recreational, or high-use recreational, which means there's other uses. So it's one of these things that you can say no, and something else happens that you really don't have much control over except for a conditional use permit. But again, all of that's supposed to be refreshed. I've asked staff to put together an updated fact sheet based upon what are the approved uses, by right uses versus conditional use agreement uses, so that the public has an understanding, because some of the stuff that was talked about before is not applicable to a condition use, some of it is. So staff really needs to sort through all that. The planning commission tried to do it. I don't think they got 100% definition on what they were doing. So I've asked staff to put out within this updated fact sheet, what are the exact by right uses on that property zoning? And what are the conditional use opportunities for that property to be developed?
But you understand what I'm saying, that the public gets a perception that there's negotiations going on behind closed doors.
There are relative to the development agreement, but they're not negotiations per se. It's trying to bring agreement amongst the community. So whatever you define negotiate, we're not saying you give me 2 cents for this and I'll give you that. That's not what it really is.
We're not arguing, by the way, we're friends.
Understand.
If we can disagree and still be friends. I have another question for you, John.
Before we go on, I decided, as part of the group as planning commission, and to just qualify what you had said, Supervisor Hydall.
Yeah.
There was, as you know, an exhibit where the applicant, and it was only shared at the last hearing, exhibit, if you recall. And I saw that, and I was a bit concerned based on some of the statements that they made of what they thought their entitlements were. And I asked staff, because I was the chairman at the time, I asked staff to comment, and you know this, John Davey,
Yes.
as well. I had staff comment specifically on each and every alternative that they provided as part of that example. So we were very specific in respect to what they thought their rights were for that. So I don't think we had any ambiguity at all when it came to what they were presenting of what they thought they had, that something that was an entitled right or an administrative review of some sort, what level was it, ministerial or some level of discretion. So, and I tasked staff, and they did a pretty good job, and they went through every, I think it was like 9 of them.
Okay, so when they put out this fact sheet, it should have exactly that table in it, because I'm hearing there's going to be a different set of inputs in certain areas, but we'll see.
Would not be surprised.
We'll see.
But we were very specific. I made sure we were very specific based on some of the claims that they were making, which I did not, all were factually correct.
But we need to get factually correct, whatever that is, the information out to the public, so they can look at what are the alternative uses of that property before the vote is conducted. And, it'll weigh in wherever it weighs in, but it's not, well, I should just stop there, because my whole interest is in trying to get the greatest community use out of that property with the standpoint of recreational. That's what my interest is. And to have them develop something that doesn't give us the desired recreational use, but is some other approved
You
use
mean a
by right?
15-acre park next to the freeway?
Yeah, well, it just depends on how you look at things, right? Sometimes when
Understand.
you go out and actually survey, what you find is some of the complaints that people have had about high noise levels along the highway and stuff, you actually go out and walk the site, and the freeway is above where a lot of that site is. You don't have a lot of noise factors. So people's perspective are different than the reality when you actually go out and walk the property. So all of those things weighing in, I'm hopeful that ultimately the Community Services District will find some piece of that property that they can reach agreement on goes into the development agreement for use for recreational purposes. If they don't, they don't. But that's been the long-term hope. So
And I appreciate you answering these questions, because you hear a lot of rumors out there in the public, and at least I have the guts to ask you. I have another question for
To
you.
that end, I want to ask a question, because I've been listening about, this is not my area of expertise, and I've been listening to you for several months now about this. And my question is, how does the public find out about their opportunities for input? Because that seems to clear up a lot of this, the detail, et cetera. And so that would be my.
I'm going to ask Cindy how we do that with our
Perfect, 'cause
outreach,
that
because
needs- That needs to be publicized, because that's going to
Okay.
address the conspiracy theories
So-
that develop behind the closed
Right.
doors.
So would you explain what we've been doing with everybody who submitted an email or written us a letter?
For years, I've compiled huge lists for this project. Same with Project Frontier. As soon as we got any information, that huge list, the information went out. So when we get the information, when we have stuff, we're gonna put it out. You're on that list, so
Oh,
you'll get
I've
it.
sent you tons of letters.
You don't have to wait to see something in Nextdoor about the
Correct.
Legistar listing. We're going to send out links directly to that, to everybody who's asked us the questions on this. over the last year and a half, 2 years.
Got
So
thousands,
that's the way we're
thousands.
gonna reach
I agree.
everybody.
You've answered all my
I
questions.
mean, we'll
always.
reach everybody, no, because there's always a new resident and all those kinds of things, but
Then I'm thinking, to
Right.
your end, there's an opportunity for you to then share that out with the folks that have
Correct.
concerns. I mean, there's free.
Yeah.
That's how we all communicate, but
Right.
that to me is like, if I'm hearing people that are concerned about the issue, I'm gonna say, reach out to the
Correct.
person on the list so that you have the
Yeah.
information.
Anybody that has written in, I keep.
and
keep
APAC will be
yeah.
having involvement too. I'm not sure exactly what they're planning on doing, but,
Well, since the project hasn't changed, we've made our recommendations, so.
right, so they stand, right?
But if there's a change, of course, we're gonna address it.
Right.
You know, I think we've been pretty consistent. The findings we submitted were consistent, I think, with what the planning commission found.
I cannot tell you how many times someone's come up to me and said, John Heidel said this. I go, that is not true. He did not say that. I don't know where you got that from.
So, so,
Anyway, thank you for answering that question.
so we,
'cause
we
now
we
I-
are
now
trying
I
to
know where that
communicate
can be
with
directed.
everybody who's shown an interest as quickly as we can, once these things get defined. And when we have something that's in the form of a new draft DA or not, we'll let people know about it. And then we're gonna allow as much time as we reasonably can for that to be digested before it comes to the board. But it's all been kind of a moving target right now relative to timing because of a number of issues that have come up recently. The latest one was the greenhouse gas stuff.
Wow.
And so we're using CEQA consultants, and it turns out with the passage of time, there's been a lot of new legislation relative to greenhouse gases, so there need to be a refresh of the environmental analysis relative to that and compliance relative to that. My understanding is that's now been completed, it's been submitted to the planning department, so they're reviewing it, determining the sufficiency of it, and if that meets the gate of the planning department, that it sufficiently satisfies the changes in the legislation, that they've met that criteria, it's compliant with the general plan, et cetera, then we can go move forward and schedule the next hearing, so.
So then, so again, I've been listening.
Oh, yeah.
So there's the Amazon,
Yeah.
there's the Costco, there's the golf course.
Right.
How do, because I'm hearing the same theme over and over again, that folks are not sure how to become engaged in the process. So what is the best way for folks to learn how to be, is it monitor the board's agendas? Is it, what's the best way?
What level of engagement do they want? If they really want to understand details, join APAC and get involved with
Please.
the committee and really dig in and understand it.
Perfect.
Because you will walk away with a great understanding about the county processes and state law and a lot of other things by being involved with APAC. So if you really want that grassroots, dig deep in, APAC is a place to get involved because they do a thorough job of reviewing all these projects. If you only want to understand what's coming before the decision makers for a final vote, then the best thing to do is to follow and subscribe to Legistar, because as soon as that planning commission hearing, and you put in keywords, I want to hear about Central Eldorado Hills.
Perfect.
And so the county will respond and give you a direct link. We're going to do it from my office separately.
Yeah.
So for the people who've contacted us, obviously, but we don't have email addresses and other contact information for people who haven't reached out as of yet, but we've got a long, long list. But that would be the best way to do it.
That's a great idea, thank you, because now I can help promote that, because I think that's where it comes in is,
Yeah.
oh, I missed it, and I didn't get a chance to have public.
We have a subscription process. If you want to learn about every project that goes through El Dorado County, you can sign up for every project. If you only want to find out projects within District 1, you can sign up for projects within District 1. If you only want to hear about things related to fire insurance, I think there's even a way to parse down to get those notifications. But clearly, and that applies to our commissions too. If you want to get the notifications of all the planning commission hearings, if you want to get the notifications of our seniors group meetings, Commission on Aging, you can get those notices. So any committee or commission that you would like to receive an email when they schedule an agenda or a meeting, you can subscribe for
I
it.
get that one, but I didn't know that I could do it by topic, and I don't know that the general public knows that you can do it by topic. And that's, I think, an opportunity for us to promote.
I think there's a link on the supervisor's website to sign up for the email. There's a link on the APAC website. You can go in and sign up for emails. You can be pretty selective.
Yeah.
If you do all of them, you'll get a lot of emails. But,
I just want to pass it on, because
Yeah.
that's where I'm feeling the tension. I mean, I'm hearing it.
Well, maybe one of the best things that we can do is we can include in the minutes for this meeting some of those links.
Let's
If
do
you want to
that.
subscribe to El Dorado County's commissions and committees and
I think
stuff,
you-
here's the link. to
If
do
here's
it.
your hot topic,
I
here's
think
how you
it's,
do it.
it's one location on the county website, then you pick your topics.
Right.
Yeah, and I know, like I said, I know I did it for, because I do the commissions, vacancies and all that kind of stuff. but I haven't followed the hot topics, and I didn't know you could pull them out by.
I don't know, they
supervisor
call
or
them hot
district.
topics.
No.
Yeah.
I just think if they signed up for District 1 things, that would be super helpful.
Well, District 2 too as well, because,
true.
yeah. You can also sign up for the fire board email messages, the
Right.
CSDs.
Right.
And a
There's
lot of
no
these things-
excuse not to know what's going on in this
Yeah.
town. Supervisor Heidel has done a great job. There's always stuff out.
Well,
Whenever there's a
we're-
meeting, you go to Board of Supervisors meetings, you go to APAC, see all the time there. So really, what's unfortunate, like the Amazon project, it gets later in the project, then all these rumors come out. And it's like, that hasn't happened yet. What are you talking about? I have two more questions, if you don't mind.
Let's go ahead, yeah.
How serious is Costco about coming in, and why? I understand that location, but we have a business park here.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Costco go in our business park where they're supposed to go? That is going to create, that in apartments at that Silva Valley is going to create havoc. And people don't understand that anyone who lives on the north part of town, there's going to be additional traffic going to Costco. They're not going to get off on the freeway and get back on. So why has Costco looked at any other locations?
They looked at a number of locations. There was, the Missouri Flat Road area tried to recruit Costco to come up. Costco looked at that intersection and traffic circulation around there and said, no, thank you. The reason they like Silva Valley Parkway and that site is it's a level of service A
It won't be when they're done with it, though.
intersection. It won't be when they're done, but
It'll be
right
like
now
a
it
D or
is.
an F.
It's the most free-flowing intersection anywhere in El Dorado County.
But I've heard Costco's kind of hasn't really engaged in any conversation over the last 6 months. Is that true?
Haven't with the county, because it's all been basically the EDH 52 part of it to get their proposal revised and ready to go. But they're getting ready, as I understand it, to put out the NOP, Notice of Preparation for the environmental document, right? Their EIR. So that's what they're trying to work on right now with this project.
They did an NOP and they did a scoping meeting back in 2021 after we had the meeting here.
But I think this changed.
So that was our question.
The project,
Will it be
the
revised?
current
Yeah.
proposed project has changed some of the provisions that they have to put out the NOP on, so.
And hopefully we can actually have the physical meeting, in-person meeting here.
I think it's a
Because last
terrible
time it was
location for
virtual,
Costco. I really
and-
do, but that's just my opinion. My last question is,
Yes.
what is going on with the hotel at Town Center? It's obvious it's vacant and there's nobody working on it. I mean,
So there are a lot of, like on Nextdoor, I've gotten 4 emails over the weekend about it,
when you drive by, there's
Yeah.
nobody there. It's vacant.
or if you're at the movies.
Did they
or-
foreclose? Did
No,
they-
they're working inside the building, and it's not a big crew. I have people sending me text pictures of people working with hard hats inside the
Really?
building today. Just not a lot. I
I've
don't
not
know.
heard anything from planning that says there's any change.
And for them, it's an approved use from the, the town center specific, well, it's already Hill specific plan, but the town center
Yeah.
plan development. It's approved use for the hotel. All they had to do is pull building permits and be compliant. And so they have the permits.
It seems like there's no one. I drove through there the
Yeah,
other
it
night.
does.
There's nobody there. It's like they
And it's
closed
never-
shop.
It's never a reassuring thing when something's in a pause, something that big, but. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, there's guys inside. Yeah,
So, yeah, well, sometimes it's supply chain. You can only get so many products in at a certain period of time. So
It
you run
also
a
might
smaller
be-
crew when you get to that part of it, so.
it also might be the timing of how they're funding it, among other projects, so.
Yeah.
Could be the economy too. I mean,
If you haven't heard anything about any intended slowdown or anything on that site, right? You're still going out and doing inspections when required and, yeah.
Took them forever to get started as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it was a slow startup and stuff, but I guess they have their reasons, and so I think they're still compliant within the county building permit cycle in terms of getting things done. Used to be, 2 years or something or other, I think, on a commercial project. I'm not sure what it is these days, but I think they're still compliant, but I can ask.
Thank you, I
next time
appreciate
We have
it.
the meeting, I'll ask and find out what the status is. Because I had not heard that. I've driven by and it seems like it's slow, but it's always kind of been slow, at least from my view, so. Very good. So with that, I think
We
we're
have one
ready.
person.
Okay. Mike, you have the floor.
Yes, I wanted confirmation. The public is going to get a fact sheet on whatever revisions Parker people make before this goes to the board. Is that correct?
I have requested staff put that out and they're working with our communications manager to do that, but I've not seen the product yet. So they committed to do it. I can't do it myself. They have to do it, but they committed to do it. That's the best I can tell you.
Okay. The other thing is, I will meet you at any time, you just team, and we can walk that area next to the freeway where you say it's not gonna be that noisy. And let you and I walk up and down that area and see how noisy it really is.
Well, we'd have to get permission from the property owner to go out there, which I was with the property owner when I was out there walking it several months ago, so.
I'm
But yeah, we
willing to
can certainly
trespass.
ask them for that.
I'm willing to trespass.
Well, I'm not, so, yeah. So one of us would need to contact the property owner and see if we can get permission. So since you don't want to do that, I guess I can ask them, but I would need to know how I contact you.
Oh, I'll be happy to send you a message.
Very good. All right, thank you. Okay, anybody else?
No.
All right, so we're ready to move on to item 6, our leadership team progress reports, and we always start with public safety, and then I want to give John Vania a chance to do whatever his final comments are, unless you don't have an urgency to leave this evening. Okay, so public safety, do we have a sheriff? I didn't see anybody representing the sheriff's department unless I'm missing them.
No.
Okay, and
No CHP.
I'm not seeing the CHP either, unless there's somebody there that I don't recognize. So I think we're moving right on to the EDH fire report. So we have our two chiefs here, so to speak. So Chief
Yeah.
Lilly, you can start, and
Oh, definitely. Well,
Chief
I'll
Mo
start
can finish if he wants, whatever.
I'll start with my boss here, with Chief Johnson, obviously the fire chief's here, and I always like him to have the floor. But before, just thank you, John. You've been amazing and a great servant, a great friend. And John's been helpful for as long as I've been here as a fire marshal, with just, hey, give me a quick phone call, like, hey, there's something going on, you need to pay a little more attention to it. And I'd be like, oh, I gotta pay attention. I appreciate your friendship. Anyways, with that, and I know we're gonna spend more time praising you, but I want to give the chief a chance, please, to start, and then we'll tag.
What you're gonna cover.
I have a secret list.
It obviously
Good
goes
evening, Mo
downhill.
Johnson. My pleasure to be your fire chief. And there's a couple of things I'd love to update you on. There's a few happenings around the training center. One is we're really, really close to opening the training center. We had a kind of a family event down there. Just for 20 years, that training center has been in the planning phase. And so we're that close. So there's a couple things we're working on with some of the signage and some of the windows and things like that. We're down there this morning and they're wrapping that up. So look for a grand opening probably in October. It'll be a very large event and get everybody down there and walk you through it. So we're excited about that. Tied to the training center, a couple other things. Happy to announce, might be a little ahead of myself, but happy to announce a partnership with PG&E. They are actually going to be putting some props in down there for firefighter safety and training. And we'll be hosting a very large exercise on August 11th. So look forward to that message out there, and we'll get that invite out to you. But it'll be a live fire exercise, and we're very excited about that. And then lastly, on the training center, we were successful, and thank you for all of your help in the room. I know Supervisor Heidel, you did a lot of work for us on that, and we're a letter of support, as did most of the fire chiefs, large fire agencies in the entire state, and other organizations. And so Folsom Lake College is bringing back their fire technology program. That was a big feat for us to get that pushed forward. I just talked to the dean today. We're still moving forward and everything. We've hired a training coordinator, and that person will be on probably in October. So things are moving forward with that piece, and look forward to some new programs coming out of that. What else?
So a little discussion just on the weather. It's definitely with the wetter winter that we had this year, the fire season's been a little delayed in starting. We're hearing 30, 45, 60 days as far as the burning conditions we would have had earlier this year. We haven't had yet. But what I would say is they are starting to come into alignment now. One of the things specific to El Dorado Hills and kind of the lower elevation here that we're in is there's a very, very thick grass crop. As you know, if you've done your fuel reduction around your house, you cut it and it started regrowing again, and then you cut it and it started regrowing again. So it's been a wet year, and with that, we know, at least for our area here in El Dorado Hills, that the grass fire risk and potential is going to be pretty significant for us. The grass is dry now. All we need is a little warm weather, which we have coming again this weekend. Yep. And so it's definitely a high risk for our local El Dorado Hills Fire Department, for sure, with the grasses the way they are. So with that being said, and we talk about this almost every meeting, we're fortunate to have the chief's defensible space inspection vision where we hired people specifically to do inspections of properties. It's the most aggressive our department's been in its history in getting out there and doing both vacant lot inspections and just defensible space clearance around homes. And that's where we need the partnership with the community. That's what you can do for yourself. That is to take a look at your house and look at that 100-foot, make sure you have clearance around your home to protect yourself and give us a chance to get there and help protect you as well when we do get there. So great program. And the chief's talked about it. We've talked about it at these meetings. We've also expanded that we're in partnership with the county. So our defensible space inspectors are not only inspecting our community here locally in El Dorado Hills, but there's emphasis areas around El Dorado County that our El Dorado Hills Fire defensible space inspectors are traveling to and doing these inspections. So we're definitely not just partnering here to take care of our community. We are expanding that outside of our borders. And we do talk about why would we do that with our resources here. And the fact of the matter is, if there's a big fire up the hill in Placerville, your fire engines here are going to leave your protection and they're going to drive up the hill to help fight the fire. That's just what we have to do. So it is within our vested interest, and I would say that's the chief's vision that he put into play when he came. And so it's been very successful and a great partnership with the County Board of Supervisors. And we're really lucky to have Supervisor Heidel to advocate for fire issues, and we appreciate that. So that's a little bit on the weather. A couple other little small things we have going on, and they're very important, but some definite big training events coming around active shooter training, which made me think when you were talking about gun control and issues, the social pressures in our school, as we've all talked about, it's in behavioral health and kids having an event. An episode at an Oak Ridge High School or any of our surrounding high schools of an active shooter is something we worry about. We know it's possible. And so we are training in conjunction with EDSO on our response to an active shooter event in a school, really in anywhere. But it is something that we're actively training on, and we have some training coming up. We're honored and proud here in El Dorado Hills to have the equipment on our fire engines and our chief officer vehicles to be able to put the plate vests on so we can protect ourselves, the helmets, and the training and the equipment to go in that event with our law enforcement partners and effectively rescue people that have been shot. So that's a great training. It's a very important training, and we're actively engaged in that. And then with our new training center, we have some countywide training we're going to start hosting. And I think you've heard it, but we really are looking at the training in El Dorado Hills to be a regional, if not beyond regional asset. The chief's messaged that, and we're really actively involved in that. And it's a great thing to be a part of, to be in El Dorado Hills, have a resource like that, and be expanding beyond just our El Dorado Hills community and supporting our partners around us. So that's the key things I had from fire department, unless you have anything else.
Just one last piece, I almost forgot. We're hosting a meeting here in the next couple of days. And Chief Lilienthal has been the spearhead of that meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a pretty big deal. So the organization is called Fire Scope of California. And it's Firefighting Resources of California Organized for Potential Emergency. So this group really started down in Southern California back in the 70s when we had some wildland fires coming through. And it has grown exponentially over the years. And so as it stands today, it is really for the entire state. So it's all the fire service leaders getting together, and we truly organize what we do, how we respond throughout the entire state. They were also the group that invented ICS, Incident Command System. And so pretty powerful with the publications and things that they do. I am the vice chair of that group at this time. We've got several of our other employees that are in several other work groups. And so we do a lot of good work. I tell you all that because we are hosting a statewide board of directors meeting Wednesday and Thursday of this week that Chief Lilienthal has been organizing for us. And it's pretty neat. We're technically a really small organization when you look at the state fire service, LA cities, LA counties, Orange County, San Diego's, Kern counties, San Bernardino's, you name them. We're a very small organization, but we have a very powerful stake there in that we represent all of the fire districts in Northern California. Why is that important to El Dorado Hills, the residents of El Dorado Hills? Because we get a say in how resources are responding to incidents, how agencies are reimbursed for those services out there, how truly the fire service is going to operate in the state of California. We've got that voice, we've got that seat at the table, and it's been very effective. It's been said multiple times, is whatever California does with respect to the fire service, the rest of the world does as well, and that's proven time and time again. So we're looking forward to that. It's a big opportunity for us. The meeting rotates around multiple departments throughout the state, and it landed in a small organization right here, and we're happy to serve over at District Church. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
What actually happens at Upper Park? There's two signs that says you're in violation, you need to weed whack this area. What happens if they haven't done it? There's two lots there. How long does it take? Does the county get involved in that?
Yeah, so here in El Dorado Hills, we post the property with a sign. You've probably seen our signs out if you're driving around. Very effective tool. It's also required that we do that. So after a period of time, we work with the property owner. We allow them the opportunity to do the clearance. We send them official correspondence mandating they do the clearances. If they fail to do that, then we hire a contractor to come in and do the clearance for them. And then we seek cost recovery on their annual tax bill. So at a high level summary, that's the process that goes on. In respect to timing, a lot of it's depending on the contractor's availability and how many total lots we end up with that need to be cleared. So that process is underway right now, though. Any other add-ons to that?
Yeah, that's probably been our biggest challenge. We've had a vegetation management program for decades. Like Chief said, one of the most aggressive, along with Cameron Park here in the county. The challenge now is post-pandemic, everybody is out and about now, everybody's back. The challenge is we can't find any of the contractors to come out. We used to have a list of contractors. I was just told the other day that we now have one, and that one barely available. The other thing is the costs have gone up exponentially, where we budget $15,000 for mitigation. We're budgeting significantly more than that because they just charge more for those services. So we're definitely having some challenges there. The contractors tend to go where the money is. And so when there's a large fire, you get a lot of people going there, or there's a large threat, or there's a new ordinance, they're going to go to those areas. The Camp Fire has pulled a bunch of folks away. The Caldor mosquito fires have pulled people away. So that's probably our biggest challenge, is just finding vendors to do the work. Even for folks that are willing to do the work, they just can't find a vendor to do it for a reasonable cost.
Well, the county gets involved if the individual doesn't pay and reimburse the fire
Put a lien
department,
on their
right?
house? Is that what happened?
The fire department goes
Lien
through
the
the
property.
process and we lien the property and recover it. And that is not something that we want to do.
No.
But that is something that's necessary for people to understand how important this is, and having a nuisance property that creates a threat to the rest of the community.
You know me, John. Did Cameron Park come to El Dorado Hills and ask for an RFP on fire protection for those two fire stations
So great question.
versus CDF?
The answer is they have not approached us, but we have been to their board meetings. We're in constant communication. I understand there's a key board meeting coming up on the 19th of this month. I do anticipate them reaching out and having kind of formal conversations with all the fire districts.
Because I don't think people realize right now that station's being kept open. But if that station closes, that taxes the rest of the county, including El Dorado Hills. When they close a fire station, that really taxes El Dorado Hills.
And that's a great point. I certainly appreciate you acknowledging that. People might wonder and ask, well, why would you even be looking at Cameron Park? The reason is if you lose a fire station, a key location like that, that's 1,500 calls that have to be picked up by someone. The closest station is going to be Station 86. That's El Dorado Hills Fire Station. So that station will without a doubt be impacted. We already work on the closest resource. It's not even mutual, it's automatic aid system, but we're balanced. You take one engine out of that, we're not going to be balanced. So not only will that fire engine be responding to an incident, but our other fire engine down in Latrobe's got to move over now to cover. And so it's impacting us from two different directions.
Thank you, Chief.
Is that your last?
I don't come to many meetings anymore, so I have a lot of questions.
Okay, Wendy May, you have a question for our fire chiefs?
Yes, sir. With what he said, when and where is the meeting that he's going to happen in a
Okay.
couple of days if the public is allowed to attend?
It's Wednesday and Thursday. The chief's going to clarify on the attendance and audience.
Which meeting?
Fire scope.
The fire scope meeting is going to be at District Church, and it is Wednesday and Thursday of this week.
And the time?
Turn my microphone on. The Wednesday start time is at 1 o'clock, and then it picks up, and then that goes until 5 o'clock on Wednesday, and then it picks up again on Thursday morning at 8:30.
Okay, great. And the public is allowed to attend?
We've not had public attend the meetings so much. There's not that you're precluded from coming, but it is a very structured meeting where the chiefs are flying in literally for 2 days of business. So there's no opportunity really for public comment. It's strictly going down the business and getting things taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So thanks again for the fire report. Really appreciate that. Go ahead, you're on.
Thank you.
Infrastructure and, yeah, planning commission.
Yeah, I'm going to let you deal with the PCI
Yes.
issue.
Yep.
And so my last hearing is this Thursday, and we've got one of a few quick quack car washes. And
Not El Dorado Hills, but
right,
Yes.
well, those are going to be fun for the group. This is pretty.
you can call in from Texas, it'll be fine.
I just might. But this one's going to be pretty vanilla, so to speak, because it's where the old Bank of America is at Prospector Plaza off Missouri Flat. So you've got commercial all around you, as opposed to the other proposed ones that has residential in the El Dorado Hills. So the one in Sienna Ridge and the one
Green
on Green
Valley,
Valley, yeah, and Sophia, right? So, and then the only other issue is the wonderful cannabis ordinance. So for potential changes, so I look forward to providing a few comments on that, on my departure. So looking for some recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for some potential modifications. You know, some might be warranted, some administrative changes. So we've been talking with staff about what, try to find some agreement. And then we'll talk about the other issues. So that should be interesting. So that's about it.
And for those of you who don't know, the reason why the cannabis discussion is going to plan, that was part of a settlement agreement based upon a lawsuit that's filed against the county. And so the county agreed as part of the settling of that lawsuit that we would hold public hearings, starting with the planning commission to take inputs on modifications of the ordinance, the cannabis ordinance. So that's why it's starting there. We do have a cannabis ordinance. It was passed a couple years ago, but they're requesting changes. And so that was the motivation, is the settlement agreement to get it to the
Right.
planning commission and get it moving. So
We had a workshop about a month ago, and so we're going to be wrapping that up hopefully Thursday.
very good.
And I'm going to exit stage right.
Okay.
And I won't say goodbye. I'll say I'll see you soon, because I'll be back in a couple months.
Oh, well, here's my chance. You're one on the door. I'll tell you again later, because I know we're on the phone quite a bit, or texting. Yes, I know. I'll give the updates on Texas baseball but thank you. With APAC, you've been invaluable in terms of providing feedback when we have questions about anything, and just your experience at the county, your experience with development and how projects are processed, and, you're just have been a tremendous value to us. And as a friend, thank you. And also as a friend, thank you for not calling me to help load your truck.
So as a parting word, I'm going to say you have served us well, and thank you, dear sir, for all of your contributions to our community. So
It's been my pleasure. So it's kind of good to give back. A lot of people, when they retire, they just kind of take off or just disappear. So it's been a pleasure to get back for a while. All right, thank you, guys.
Very good.
And
Thank
like
you.
I said, I'll see you around, and I'm sure John will, Katie and Ida will be talking.
Yes.
you can always tune into our meetings, our community council meetings, and be refreshed every month on what's going on.
Ahead, so if I need a little,
Right.
a little assistance in my,
Okay, all right. All right, so I'm going to move on very quickly then to PCIs. I don't know if people recognize the term pavement condition index, but it's a measurement that county DOT performs every 2 years in any given location, but it's done annually. So some of the measurements may be a year old, some of them may be 2 years old when they get updated, but I have a list of all of the District 1 county maintained roads, because I get often asked about when are you going to improve my road? And the easiest thing I can do is look and say, well, what street do you live on? Let me look up the pavement condition index, and I'll give you some idea of where you are, right? So to give you a brief history, the pavement condition index has 4 different levels. 70 to 100 is considered a good road. So if you get a score of 70, like on a test, when you're trying to to get an A, B, or C, right? That's good. 50 to 69 is at risk. 25 to 49 is poor, and 0 to 24 is considered failed. So we have some of those that are 0 to 24 in District 1. So when you look at the best to the worst, Serrano Parkway has a 96 out of 100. It is the best roadway as measured by our PCA determination in various segments of anything else in El Dorado Hills.
And then when you go and drive and look at it, it is in better condition than most roads. It's spalling everywhere. And that's kind of shocking when you drive, you don't pay attention until you like look at the road.
Yep.
And the blacktop's gone in several sections and, you know.
So PCI is not the only measurement you
Yeah.
use, but it's one of the measurements. The worst measurement that we have in El Dorado Hills is a 14, and that's called Palomino Court, and it's off of Mormon Island Drive, and I've not been out there recently to look at it, but that's the bottom line is we range from a 96 to a 14, and anything below a 24 is pretty much a failed road, of which we have 6 roads identified on here that are in that failed road condition, and includes things like Francisco Drive, Lake Crest Drive, Shadowfax Lane, which has recently been redone. Shadowfax is now upgraded, Tam O'Shanter Drive, and then it goes on and on and on. So if you would like to know what your street is, we can give you that information. And with that, we can tell you what the probability is it's going to be until how long your streets will be resurfaced, given the current gas tax that we collect from the state that's supposed to pay for all of our road maintenance. So I'll leave it at that, but it is one measurement. I won't call it scientific, but it's a measurement of how severely damaged our roadways are. And so that's why I use it to help people understand where they are relative to why can't my subdivision be done next in terms of resurfacing. And so there's a pecking order, so to speak. So with that covered, I'm going to open it up to anybody else on the leadership team who would like to suggest they go next. Any volunteers?
I'll do it.
Okay.
I'm right here.
Let's do APAC.
I'm right here.
Let's do it.
Okay, our APAC meeting is not on a Wednesday this month in July. It's room's unavailable, and we thank the fire department for making it available to us. So beggars cannot be choosers, and we are beggars. Our meeting will be on Tuesday, July 18th. It'll be 6:30 p.m. in this room, and also streamed live on YouTube and on Zoom. So you can participate on Zoom. You can listen on YouTube or watch. You know, even as late as last week, we didn't think we'd have a lot to talk about. We talked about maybe not, having a meeting in July and taking a month off, but obviously with the update for the EDH 52 project, we're hoping that the project documents will be available. If not, we're going to describe what's in the letter we received today that went out to agencies. There's going to be a TAC meeting July 31st, if I'm remembering correctly. So the proposal is that and as John alluded, they call them the northern site and the southern site. Mm-hmm. And if you look at a map, it's an eastern site and a western site. So the eastern site's EDH 52. It's closest to Serrano, the A villages, where Country Club Drive will eventually come through. They're proposing, the Costco's still on here. The northern site, eastern site, 18 acres, mixed-use development. Now it's proposed mixed-use development will include 14,000 square feet for neighborhood commercial uses, as well as 304 multifamily units within 5 four-story buildings. And then they list a bunch of amenities and other things. So there's no details yet. We don't have a project document to look at so we can consider it. I think I bugged Cindy several times. Hey, when's that coming? But when it's out, we'll have it. It'll be posted on the APAC. We did put the letter to agencies. It's on the APAC website now on the project page for EDH 52 in Costco. So we're going to talk about that. We'll probably revisit what we discovered, I think the day of or the day before our meeting last month about the changes to the Montana Master Plan mixed use proposed for Montana to El Dorado. Phase 2 was approved in 21. And the applicant worked a long time to get it approved. Worked with APAC a lot, met with APAC, just even within groups of APAC members, like 4 times easily, and then attended 2 or 3 APAC meetings to provide feedback publicly. But they've discovered that there's not a big demand for retail. They had a hotel project lined up. That's not going to happen now. They had a spot for a small grocer. That's not going to happen. a drive-through, a quick serve fast food type of thing. So all those things they had planned, and even the office components of what they had talked about. So now they're calling it mixed use within the entire master plan. And they're talking about 300 multifamily housing units, neighborhood gathering space, and other associated improvements to the shopping center. It's on almost 17 acres. So that's a big change. And all he has in right now is a pre-app so that he can get the feedback from the county. He'll have a TAC meeting. We got the letter for that today as well. We'll have a TAC meeting. We'll probably provide some input to that, some just questions, whether we hear back about it or not. It's another thing. I expect we will hear from Mr. Perkins because he's been very generous with his time in the past with this project. So those are the two things we're definitely talking about. There's a handful of other items that.
Let me explain the mixed use a little bit. There's two types of mixed use: vertical mixed use and horizontal mixed use.
Yes.
Vertical mixed use is the European style.
Yeah.
The
above.
storefront's down below, housing is up above.
Yeah.
They're talking vertical mixed use, trying to tie phase one commercial projects with the residential multifamily behind. So that's what they mean by mixed use on that project. So it's clearly a horizontal mixed use type of
It's,
concept.
yeah, and a lot of questions about mixed use and commercials have come through that I've heard. And primarily, pretty much every commercial zoning with the exception of, I think, the big box, the commercial regional, not the community commercial or the other levels, there's a mixed use is a permitted use as long as your project is processing and making that request. So it's been approved for one use. They're going to come back. We don't know how much the TAC meeting will reveal that they have to do additional environmental work. The traffic will be in circulation will be considerably different than what's been approved for the project they have now. But until there's something more than the pre-app and there's more documents coming in, it's hard for us to provide any input. There's some basic elevations of what the housing will look like they'll be tiered on the hillside and that type of thing. Part of that project was the roads going through it are private roads, just as town center's private roads. And so we had a concern when he first came in with the project that, hey, your existing parking and circulation element it's a little substandard. The spaces are tight, the angles, sight lines are horrible. So he was addressing that with this project that he had approved in 2021. So now what that's going to look like, basically Post Street is going to be Post Street on the other side of town center. It's going to go through his project. We don't know if that's still going to be what he's proposed or any of that. So we have other status updates we'll do. If there's something that comes up about Central, we'd love to be able to share that with people. And there's a couple of we'll probably readdress some of the cell phone tower things that have come up. I think we're going to talk about some more subcommittee work for parks in terms of how parks are meeting needs and how they're conditioned with projects and elements like that. So considering we didn't know we were going to have a meeting last week, we thought we weren't. Now we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. And so you're going to have to sit through it. So, and it's recorded, so you can watch it later. But we appreciate any input or any feedback that the community will provide. Again, you can be here in the building with us on Tuesday. You could be online with Zoom, or you can provide us some written public comments in advance of the meeting, and we'll try to get them in as well. Did I miss anything?
I think you covered pretty much, but
Okay.
For clarification, Montano de Oro is in District 2.
Yes. Is it?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, it is. So everything on the south side of
Well,
White Rock Road,
Four Seasons.
Four Seasons is in
That's
District
District
2.
Is it?
With the redistricting,
Oh,
everything
Stonebriar,
on the
Stonebriar. I got it back.
Stonebriar is in District 1,
Okay.
but the
Business
dividing
park
line
and
now
all
is
food.
the
Yes.
middle of White Rock Road. So everything on the south side is District 2, the stuff on the north side is District 1. So
Yes.
that was part of the 2020
Yes.
redistricting boundary line adjustment. So, yeah, just so people understand. You can still participate in the APAC,
Yes.
independent of what district you live in, right?
Correct.
That's
Just
always
like
helpful,
community
but-
council.
Yes, right.
So it's the same thing. So,
Yep.
yeah, we'd love to hear from the community if there's questions or comments, anything that you want to contribute. If you want to work on a subcommittee, and then you could be a voting member of APAC.
hey,
So,
Very good. Thank you, John. Next.
if you're looking for volunteers, let me just dovetail. on
Okay,
that.
that's fine. Go ahead. Yes.
For the El Dorado Hills South.
Yep.
Picture. The El Dorado Hills South Coalition, which basically is Heritage, Four Seasons, and Blackstone, and 3 associated civic groups associated with that group. We've had a series of meetings over the last month, again, with the purpose after Project Frontier. How do we engage with the county? How do we engage with special districts in a more meaningful way? How could we prevent the kind of acrimony we saw and we all witnessed during the Project Frontier situation? And basically going through the projects we're aware of and how we engage, for example, with APAC better. And in fact, and we basically had to have 3 or 4 pages. Knowing me, I like to collect notes of items that we're addressing. But let me just quickly hit upon 3, 2 of which are already in front of APAC. Another one will become part of the APAC agenda very soon. Of real concern for particularly the 2 senior communities. Certainly the Carson Creek R&D proposal, which is a parcel split for the purpose of, again, their words, industrial, wholesale, warehouse, distribution buildings. The zoning issue obviously is a concern, and hopefully at some stage we'll get a better understanding of what the termination notice that Karen Gardner put forth might impact that. If not, hopefully APAC will receive some responses to our questions on that particular area. But the biggest concern for us, or the biggest concerns, are the impacts on obviously Latrobe and the traffic there, but also, even more importantly, for Four Seasons and for Heritage, is the impact on Carson Crossing. Yet they're talking about 4,000 additional vehicles coming up and down Carson Crossing potentially. That's going to have a devastating impact on a road that basically, if you look at the Pacific Plan, it's designated as a connector, the neighborhood connector. And if we ended up with thousands of additional vehicles of any kind, including trucks, that road and the lack of sound barriers and everything else will have a negative impact on the residents. So we'll be addressing those things with APAC and with the county in a formal fashion. But we're very much in line on that one and most everything else that APAC's doing, including questions we have dealing with the self-storage proposal, 740 units plus a 60,000 square foot incubator that we still don't know what that is yet. And of course, the tower, the Verizon towers, and whether or not there is some way we could have discussions with Verizon to see if there's going to be a better location and not be an eyesore for so many residents in Blackstone and Heritage. And also that's that close to schools and residences, given the kind of neighbors or noise associated with the generators and other things that will be just, though it have to be some kind of modification. And clearly a 97-foot tower is twice as high as allowable heights theoretically in the county. So we're going to be looking very, very closely on that one and working with APAC very clearly on seeing how we can help as communities work and craft that information. The one item that will become, I think, an agenda item very soon with APAC is that thanks to the leadership of initially of the Blackstone group of our group or association, and also the Heritage Group, we've met a number of times now with the Wynn Properties folks. I am happy to say that those discussions are going on. They have met with residents now in one town hall. They're going to be meeting in 2 other town halls at Heritage and Four Seasons yet this week. And I'm also happy to hear that they're going and chatting with various supervisors and also other members of the community. I mentioned this not because I have formed any opinion on the proposal for a revised Creekside residential, because I quite frankly don't have enough information to say. But I can say that from my perspective, it's a wonderful situation when a developer will reach out to the community and actually engage those people that are being impacted in advance. So that we're not second guessing and we're not having to sit there with picket signs and bumper stickers and everything else that was associated with Project Frontier. Anyway, that's, just want to let you know that this group and this El Dorado Hills South Coalition is sincere in wanting to pull together our piece with the rest of El Dorado Hills and come up with something meaningful in the future. So that's.
Bob, is there
my
a name
report.
for that group, or if somebody's interested in getting that information, do you guys have?
Yeah, well, I guess you could use my my nonprofit's name if you wanted to get probably
No,
the
I
easiest
just
way.
didn't know if you said that you had.
Oh,
the
yeah, well,
coalition.
it's it's called El Dorado Hills South Coalition. It's not a formal association yet. We're gonna formalize that.
Okay, so there's not a place for people to go at this point if they want information about, or to.
Yeah, well, I think probably the easiest way for them to contact me or the concerned residents of El Dorado Hills Heritage Village mouthful, or through APAC, my association with APAC, any one of those they can go through. And we'll certainly make sure we get back to them on that.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren, let's kind of run it back this way then. So
Okay, yeah, I have a couple comments about both the Youth Commission and Oak Ridge High School. The Youth Commission, as most of you know, is made up of about 12 high school students from all over the district and all over the county, sorry. And so we decided to extend our application period because we really want to focus on garnering more representation for all the various high schools. We've been very fortunate that we've had plentiful applications from Oak Ridge High School over the years, but we really want to increase representation specifically for Union Mine High School and Ponderosa. And so we're going to be extending that period, I think, into the school year a little bit. I kind of anticipate that the focus this year is going to continue to be mental health, which is definitely a big win for Oak Ridge High School and for District 1 because that's commonly the biggest issue that we're seeing for our youth, specifically for on campus. I think that would be the number one issue that I would want to be represented. And so kind of us continuing on with that theme is going to be huge. I also anticipate that we're going to focus a lot on building connections, trying to involve students to be involved in local government and involved in community groups. I think in the past 4 years, we've made a lot of progress on that, having students being involved in community decisions, as well as students being involved in what's going on and problems that they're seeing, and they want to reinvest themselves to be able to understand what goes on within our community. I think providing those opportunities and also utilizing commissioners to join community groups and to join community discussions is going to be a major priority for us this year. Specifically on Oak Ridge High School, although school might not be in session, there's a lot of discussion about goals and events that we're going to be producing for the next year. Fortunately, a lot of senior officers involved in leadership were able to attend a conference over the past weekend through the California Association of Student Leaders. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of education about creating positive campus culture and about kind of being able to highlight and involve every student on campus. So kind of in discussion with other Oak Ridge officers, we've kind of found that a major priority for us on campus this year is going to be providing events, activities, and opportunities for every student to feel not only recognized and valued, but also to find a place where they feel comfortable and safe. We have an amazing athletics program that highlights athletes every single week, every single month, but it's also important that we highlight students that are achieving academically or artistically. And so we want to really prioritize that this year, along with, of course, supporting our athletics program. Kind of listening to you talk about like maintaining space and about like reinvesting in our community. I think it's also important that we involve youth in that as well. I think I'll definitely want to have some on-campus discussions about maybe with our environmental clubs or our community service organizations to put together some cleanup. I think really getting our students to be involved in our community and giving them opportunities to be able to reinvest in the community that hopefully they'll come back to after college graduation or after going to FLC. I think it's going to be a really big part of making students remember that they are a huge part of the future generations of this community, as well as being a part of this community right now. So I definitely want to work with community organizations and groups to really involve students in the next year, and of course after that as well, so that we really see students remember that they are a part of this community, they are the future of this community, and really be able to create kind of a coherent loop and foundation for the future.
Thank you. Well delivered, so.
I hate following Lauren.
Let Cindy follow Lauren, then you, and then I'll wrap it up, so. So we won't force you to do that.
Well done, well done.
And congratulations. So is that new that you're going to be the class president? Was that new? Okay. Oh,
Wow.
Congratulations. Another thing on her plate.
Yeah. Congratulations.
I know, that's really. I'll just talk about a few fun things that are happening in the community. The farmers markets are continuing every Sunday from 8 to 1 in El Dorado Hills Town Center. They've moved the location. It's more by Target now, right? I haven't.
Yeah.
So I've heard
Closer to Target.
Yeah, they've been doing well still, so the move seems to be going well. And the Live on the Boulevard concerts are going to be continuing every Thursday. I know there was a little concern with ABC about the open containers and alcohol, so alcohol is no longer allowed. You can't bring your own, but the concerts are going to be continuing every Thursday in Town Center. That's from 7 to 9. There's going to be the El Dorado Hills CSD is having their summer concert on July 14th, and that's from 7 to 9:13 at the CSD Community Park. And then finally on August 4th is the yearly National Night Out. It's the El Dorado County Sheriff and Fire. It's going to be at the CSD Community Park from 5:30 to 8. They're going to have a free barbecue. They're going to have music, kids activities, canine demonstrations, CPR demonstrations, all kinds of different fun things. So that's going to be a great community event.
Very good. Thank you for that. Yeah, go ahead, Kathy. Well, I was gonna fill in the stuff afterwards. But
First thing I wanted to mention to our guest that was concerned about school shootings. I wanted to, if I haven't updated this before, the El Dorado County Office of Education is developing a threat assessment plan that's being shared with school administrators. It's a 3-level plan that if in fact a student presents distressed, that they're addressed very early on, assessed by a team, and determined how they can best support that student before something elevates. And then there's kind of that counseling piece, then there's an intervention piece, and then there's an action piece that if it escalates up to that. And there's been 2 of those trainings through County Office of Education with a consultant. They've developed that plan through their adult education. So I just wanted a little bit of light somewhere in a very concerning issue. The second thing that I wanted to share is that the Mental Health Services Act, this is your tax on the, I hate to say it this way, it's not my tax, I'm cigarettes. This is a tax on the wealthy that comes back to every county in El Dorado County.
It's a top 1% or something,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Very selective. Yeah.
It is top 1%. It comes back to every county. El Dorado County has a Mental Health Services Act of which they give millions of dollars out through a 3-year plan every year. And they are opening up their community meetings to take input on what types of behavioral health services or projects we should be thinking about in our community. They're looking for groups and organizations who would like to sponsor them coming and presenting and talking about their ideas, whether they're seniors or community members, whatnot. And I can share the contact information with Cindy. If your group would like to schedule them, you just have to host the event and have a 1 to 2 hour time block for them to come in and discuss the projects. I think this is a great opportunity in the public process. A lot of times things get put in plans and you're kind of like, how come I didn't know and why didn't I access the money? This is the time for Mental Health Services Act money if you really have projects to address those who have those concerns. So I'll share that out. And then the last thing I just wanted to say, because I thought it was interesting, I've shared with you all a few times that the community health improvement process from public health had just gone to the board on June 20th. And they gave a full report and the report is finally available. one of the observations that I had, and I'll share the link if you guys want to go through it in depth. El Dorado Hills, District 1, scored the highest out of California in a lot of areas. So for example, the pool of census tracts, meaning they took census data and grouped them all together. And District 1 has healthier community conditions than 93% of other California tracts. They have healthier economic conditions other than 86.3. You have the whole details in them. Education is at 7, higher than, and these are all the census tracts in California grouped, right? Education, 71.3. Social is 95.1. Transportation, 69.5. I've heard a lot of that here tonight. And neighborhoods at 91.5. And it goes on, but it's really interesting that we have a county report that's being broken down by district. And I'm hoping that that'll be a new trend in county government so that we can see what our community looks like as opposed to being averaged across the county. So I'll make that link available. It is a strategic plan. It will have strategies that you can look at to address the health issues that are coming forward. There will be a task force that's formed to start implementing those strategies over time. And if anyone wants more detail, I could talk about it, but I know we're getting late, so I'll go ahead and send the link to Cindy.
Good, thank you, Kathy, appreciate that. There is a lot going on in El Dorado County, and most of it is good, but some of it's not so good, so we're working on those. So let me give you two quick reports. One is from Dick Ross, who's up at the Charter Review Committee meeting, which is running this evening. So he had some notes on that. At tonight's Charter Review meeting, the agenda includes, hear concern that more at-will employees be allowed by charter, raised by the auditor controller. So at-will employees mean they're not part of a labor union, that the Board of Supervisors and certain members of the staff, i.e. well, it depends on what level you go to, but for the most part, it would be our CAO, Chief Administrative Officer, can remove people from their positions because of lack of performance or anything else. So it's not just a probationary period, it converts it to at will. And I don't know the details of that. I've not had that conversation with the auditor controller, but this would be something they would look at embedding within the charter if this moves forward. So it's kind of an interesting thought. It provides more direct control over who's in what positions, and it protects the public, I think, from getting the best service possible from the standpoint of you get to have inputs on who you would like to see in some of those positions as opposed to some of the seniority rules that currently prohibit certain actions. I'm not going to go any further than that. There's some examples that we could be brought up, but I'm not going to do that. Number 2, review the draft report of tentative final committee recommendations to Board of Supervisors to include set Board of Supervisor term limits at 3 terms only. Board of Supervisors member encouraged to hold 1 meeting annually in their district. And I've talked to the clerk of board about that, and they think that's a difficult thing to do with all the commitments we have for Zoom connectivity and that type of interaction. And what we've done recently, and I keep reminding them, is putting it on our agendas that we are not guaranteeing Zoom connectivity. If you really want to be heard, you need to come to the meeting. We are providing it as a convenience for people to be able to attend, to listen, to participate in meetings. But the board has items that they need to conduct business on. If we were to lose Zoom because of something, we're going to go ahead and conduct our business. So that's a preamble we put on the announcements that go out from the board. But this would say 1 meeting annually in each district. I still think we can do that, but there is some challenges associated with that. That the sheriff's salary comparisons be studied for validity for future use. And this gets into Charter 504. And we've had discussions on Charter 504 before, so we'll see where that ends up. And then all department heads elected and appointed annually provide strategic plan with goals and accomplishments of the prior year. And that's all department heads elected and appointed. Right now, we get all of those things from appointed. We don't get them from elected. So that would be the primary change, is all department heads would be required to provide an annual strategic plan with goals and accomplishments. So that's Charter 401. And then lastly, a draft report will discuss other matters raised but not recommended. So the Charter Review Committee is taking a lot of inputs at this point. They're trying to determine what the public's desire is for changes to the charter, and then ultimately they'll make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors will deliberate on it and determine these are the things we think we want to carry forward and put on the ballot. It could be 0. It could be 2, 3 items. It could be a number of different items. So that's yet to be determined. But ultimately, it goes to voters. And the charter doesn't change without the voters approving it by a simple majority. So if simple majority approves individual items, because they'll be put on the ballot as an individual item. Do you support this item? Yes or no? Do you support this item? So that we can go through and say, this one got 80% votes, so this one got 20% votes or whatever. So it isn't a package as I understand it. I've never participated in this particular part of the process, but I don't think it's a package. I think each individual item they bring forward gets voted on separately. So we'll see how that plays out. And then ultimately, once that vote is taken, then the charter is revised and we start operating to the new charter, whatever that may contain. So kind of an interesting process. We're one of, I think, it's 23 or something or other charter counties, somewhere in that neighborhood of the 58 counties. So charter counties are in a minority overall, but a number of counties decided to do that because they want to have more local input on their electeds and various other things. So that's what the charter serves to do. The last thing I wanted to cover was a note just on economic development. We're continuing to restructure that activity. We've had some very good conversations about how we would want to reform CDAC to be a little different orientation, probably have a different title, but the primary emphasis is looking at how we would encourage community and economic development at a more holistic, high-level view. What is it that we want across the overall county and not projects that are just local to smaller groups? Because one of the things that CDAC got off on, because the board wasn't directing what things, they started looking at really what I call smaller projects within a given community. And those need to be looked at, but they're not the things that are really driving our economic development. So we're really trying to focus on what supports staff and the manager of economic development and their goals, what supports the general plan and what we're trying to accomplish. And there's housing, jobs to housing ratios and other things in the general plan that we're trying to emphasize. But this group would have probably a different title and a different makeup. For instance, one of the things we said is that there definitely needs to be a representative from agriculture in El Dorado County. Agriculture is a major part of our economics, and there needs to be somebody representing that. Somebody needs to representing communications, and the area there is broadband primarily, because that brings in people who want to run a business from home or a business where they can access in a small type of setting the internet and do their work basically on the internet, as opposed to having a lot of goods and services come to their door front, right? So that's another major part of it. The other one that we focused on and all agreed on is the fact that we want to look at co-production sites in terms of energy production and how we address those within the county. How do we work with Pioneer Energy? How do we work with other operators and stuff? So we've actually had discussions with SBI to figure out whether it would make sense to lease part of their facility, to set up a facility there. And so those are ongoing, but that's another thing we need to have represented is that energy conversion type of process. So those are 3 of the majors, and then there's some other ones that were highlighted that would really, I think, bring a different emphasis to what that committee does. And I think changing the title from CDAC to something else is probably another important part of it. But we're really trying to invigorate, encourage, get more active participation in looking at the economic development across the whole county. Because the unfortunate reality is with Prop 13 and a 2% annual increase, if property doesn't change in your property tax base, you end up with services costing you 5 to 7% more each year, particularly in a high inflationary period. In the past, it's been maybe 2 or 3%. But as we see that property tax base become less solid looking forward and not being able to count on a 5% property tax increase every year, and that happens with recessions and other things that can play into it, we really need to look at how do we continue to grow the right kind of economics within the county, provide jobs, provide housing, and help us stay vibrant, because as many communities have recognized, the community that isn't growing is dying. And you don't want to be on that end of it. That doesn't mean rapid growth. It means planned growth and doing the right things to emphasize having jobs available for our youth and doing the educational part of it here, those kinds of things that really build community. So that's what that emphasis will be. And as we get further into that and really have a refined set of roles and responsibilities. We'll share that with everybody. Ultimately, come back to the board for a decision of whether or not we restructure CDAC to be what the ad hoc committee has recommended or something different. It's a derivative. So currently George Turnbow, District 2 Supervisor, myself are on the ad hoc committee and trying to get that activity moving along to the point we get to a decision. But hopefully that'll happen in the August, September, somewhere timeframe if we can stay diligent and stay on track. So with that, any go backs from anybody? Anything anybody wanted to bring up that they may have not mentioned originally? Yeah.
Got members. I think about my kids who I raised here and they want to come back and they want to live here and
Yes.
they can't buy a house and
Yes.
they can't work here. And I would love to have someone representing that voice on your economic development group.
And I don't know.
I'm not sure how we recruit them, but I just.
Because one of the things we want to do is bring in the Office of Education, but we
We want
wanted to
young
do
families.
that on an as subject matter basis is the way we talked about it. Because we want to get a lot of different people involved, but there's kind of a standing committee. And then there's when we talk about certain subjects, we want to get other expertise involved with. So that's kind of the concept we have now. But I appreciate the comments, but I don't know, one organization you could reach out to.
I'll tell you what, how if we go to county government? I know a lot of young folks from El Dorado County High Schools who are working in county government right now.
Okay.
I'd love to have them as a subpopulation and ask them if they can afford to buy a house here.
I'm guessing unless they're in the top
That's what
20%
I'm
of wage
saying.
earners in El Dorado County, that
But
they
you can
probably
reach
can.
them. You can reach them to understand what it's like to live here and work in county government and to want to settle down and raise a family in the county. And that way, I mean, that's a population you could reach.
Okay, and I'll bring that up when we have the
I don't
discussion.
mean to be difficult.
The next, no, that's fine. It's a good suggestion, but there has to be a recognized spokesperson for the group. It can't just be one person. I mean, the person represents it, but they need to represent a group of people, a coalition, a community
Active
based.
2030 club.
Okay, well, maybe
I don't
that's
know.
it. Maybe that's it.
Maybe it's something like that, but I'm just thinking I mean, I know that, I know my kids struggle.
Yeah.
And they want to live here where they grew up and it's hard.
Yeah, and we keep trying to find affordable housing approaches and stuff, and it's just extremely, we're trying to get an inclusionary housing provision.
No, and I understand.
And it's
but
just
that balance.
stretched out, and so we're finally got the planning department to agree that that's gonna come back to us.
And it's not a complaint, it's just an opportunity
Yeah.
to hear some different voices.
Okay, so noted. So with that, anybody else? All right, then I'll just remind everybody, our next meeting is Monday, August the 7th. We have not selected a guest speaker yet, but last month I'd asked for inputs, and I've got that list of inputs. So we're going to go down through that and see who might be available to come in and be a guest speaker, and we'll try to continue that process going. So if you do have any thoughts about somebody who'd be a great guest speaker, you can always send them to us, email us, or respond to the email. We come out with the minutes and just say, hey, I just had a thought, so-and-so would be a great guest speaker. And so we'll take that into consideration as well and try to get that lined up within the next 2 weeks or so and get it going with the guest speaker announcements. So with that, and no other go backs, I'm going to adjourn our meeting. We didn't do too terribly bad, a little after 7:35. So thank you again for your patience and your attendance.